Chapter 721. Time passed slowly. When the huge island in the sky turned into a gigantic piece of land, the changes stopped. At this moment, the starlight shield that shrouded the land suddenly turned into starlight and dissipated. In the main hall of the governor's mansion in Reincarnation Immortal City, Yichen glanced at the floating island that had become many times bigger with his divine consciousness. In the next second, the huge land shrunk again and again. In the blink of an eye, it shrank above the clouds and returned to the size of the floating island. At this moment, if someone were to look at it from the outside, they would find that the floating island in the sky was exactly the same as before. There was nothing unusual about it. However, if someone were to enter the floating island, they would immediately discover a shocking fact. The area of levitating island had expanded beyond imagination. The most terrifying thing was that the city walls of the Reincarnation Immortal City in the Reincarnation Valley were 10,000 meters tall. From afar, it looked like a straight, towering giant mountain that pierced through the clouds. It was magnificent, spectacular, and shocking. In fact, this was the city walls that only immortal cities had. Only such a domineering and powerful city wall could establish a foothold in the Eldritch world. Of course, the city walls of the Reincarnation Immortal City had not been engraved with formations or Dharma formations. The city walls alone were far from enough to establish a foothold in the Eldritch world. However, the current Reincarnation Immortal City was enough to satisfy the living needs of the people of Yuzhou. When the world was unified and the Reincarnation Immortal City was upgraded, all kinds of Dharma formations could be carved and the country could ascend. At this thought, Yichun raised his eyebrows. Then, with a thought, the foundation of the Reincarnation Immortal City, the golden stone tablet, slowly sank into the ground. Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Gui Yi, Guan Er, Zhang San, Kai Yin, and the others looked at each other in confusion. They did not see the changes in the Reincarnation Immortal City. Otherwise, they would not be in such a state. Just at that moment, a patrolling soldier hurriedly ran in. Then, he bowed to Yi Chun and said loudly, "Brother Yi, I'm sorry. Master, there are strange changes in the Reincarnation Immortal City. The commoners are terrified and don't dare to go out." As soon as the soldier finished speaking, Gui Yi, Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Guan Er, and Zhang San's expressions changed. The Reincarnation Immortal City was Yi Chen's foundation. If something bad were to happen to the Reincarnation Immortal City, it wouldn't be a good thing for Yi Chen. Yi Chen was stunned for a moment when the faces of the officials and generals changed drastically. Then, he realized that the great change in the Reincarnation Immortal City had frightened the people. After all, the changes in the Reincarnation Immortal City were simply too great. This was different from when Reincarnation City was upgraded to Reincarnation Immortal City. At this moment, the Reincarnation Immortal City had expanded by more than 10,000 times. It would be strange if the commoners were not afraid when they saw the vast expanse of empty land outside the buildings. After coming back to his senses, Yi Chan sighed inwardly and then looked at Gui Yi. "Feng Xiao, quickly write a notice and announce it to the public. Tell the commoners that there is no need to panic. The Reincarnation Immortal City will undergo such changes again in the future because it will be more stable and sturdy." Gui Yi was stunned when he heard Yi Chen's order. Then, he thought of something and was instantly stunned. In the next second, Gui Yi looked at Yi Chen in shock. He then bowed and asked, "Master, the Reincarnation Immortal City has expanded?" Guan Er, Dian Xiong, Zhang San, Kai Yin, and Chen Kun were stunned when they heard Gui Yi's words. Then, they looked at Yi Chen in unison. At this moment, a shocking thought involuntarily appeared in their minds. The Reincarnation Immortal City had expanded to an unimaginably large extent. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have said that he would take away the commoners of Yuzhou, and the soldier who came to report the great change in the Reincarnation Immortal City wouldn't have been in such a hurry. That's right. Hearing this, Yi Chen chuckled and nodded his head. Gui Yi's eyes lit up when he heard Yi Chen's affirmative answer. Then, he bowed to Yi Chen and said loudly, "Master is mighty. Jia, go." Then write the notice now. Master is mighty. Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, Guan Er, Zhang San, Kai and Chen Kun looked at each other and bowed to Yi Chun in unison. Yi Chun nodded with a smile. Then he looked at Mi Zhu and said, Zijua, quickly build houses. At the same time, send people to all the major cities in Yuzhou to issue notices and ask the commoners to gather as soon as possible. Then, take them to the Reincarnation Immortal City. My lord, there are many counties in Yuzhou province, and there are many officials in them. However, none of them have acknowledged you as their lord. If you give the order to gather the people, how should we deal with these officials? Mi Zhu hurriedly stepped out and bowed. When Yi Chun heard this, he could not help but frown. It was not that Yi Chun was angry with Mi Zhu, but that Yi Chun had neglected this problem. It was not a trivial matter to gather the commoners. If the officials in Yuzhou knew about this, they might sue Yi Chun. After all, Yi Chun's act of gathering the commoners was too abnormal. It seemed that he was making trouble or even plotting a rebellion. Kill them all or take them all. While Yi Chun was thinking about how to deal with the officials in the counties in Yuzhou, Sun Qing stepped forward and bowed to Yi Chun. Master, before the Golden Scarf calamity and the invasion of the Demon Clan, there were many selfish officials who bullied the commoners. However, when the Golden Scarf calamity and the invasion of the Demon Clan, these officials had fled in order to survive. At this moment, the rebellion has been quelled by Master, but they would not dare to come back. Otherwise, these thieves would definitely be beheaded. Therefore, I think that the existing officials in Yuzhou are all useful people. Master, please make a decision. Hearing this, Yi Chun thought for a moment, then nodded. In that case, I'll leave this matter to you. You must gather these officials in the former Reincarnation Valley within 2 hours. Then, I will take them all. Yes, Master. My lord. When Sun Qing heard this, he hurriedly bowed and said loudly. Yi Chun nodded. He then looked at Mi Zhu and said, Don't slack off on building houses. There are too many commoners in Yuzhou. We can't let them have no houses to live in after they arrive. Yes, Master. My lord. When Mi Zhu heard this, he nodded solemnly and bowed. At this moment, the patrolling soldier that Yi Chun had ordered to find blacksmiths brought 10 blacksmiths to the entrance of the hall. He then bowed to Yi Chun and said, Master, the blacksmiths are here. As soon as the patrolling soldier finished speaking, the 10 blacksmiths hurriedly bowed to Yi Chun. Greetings, Lord Yu of Beach. Hearing this, Yi Chun nodded his head, then stood up and went to the door. Yi Chun looked at the 10 blacksmiths selected by the patrolling soldier and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad. Thinking of this, Yi Chun's mind moved, and the innate treasure cauldron of heaven and earth appeared instantly. In the next second, Yi Chun's right hand sucked toward the cauldron of heaven and earth. 10 streams of creation chi flew out of the cauldron of heaven and earth, and then flew toward the 10 blacksmiths. In the blink of an eye, the 10 blacksmiths' root bones were all upgraded to 1-star immortal spirit body. At this moment, the 10 blacksmiths, who were uneasy because of meeting Yi Chun, were all stunned. Although they were ordinary people, neither civil officials nor generals, they could feel the comfortable feeling in their bodies. While the blacksmiths were in a daze, Yi Chun's mind moved and 10 innate cultivation methods appeared in an instant. Then, Yi Chun threw them in front of the 10 blacksmiths. Chapter 722. Lord, you have beached this. The 10 blacksmiths looked at the cultivation manuals that suddenly appeared in front of them and couldn't help but tremble. Then, they looked at Yi Chun and shouted in a daze. They naturally weren't trembling out of fear, but out of disbelief. One must know that they were all blacksmiths. In this era, their status was only slightly higher than that of slaves. But now, what had they encountered? Their lord, Yu of Beach of the Great Han Empire, Yi Chun, had actually given each of them a cultivation manual. This reward was really too great for them. It was so great that it was beyond their imagination. In fact, if they had made some great contributions, it would be fine. Although such a reward would also shock them, they would still be able to accept it. But the crux of the problem was that they didn't make any contributions at all, so they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. When Yi Chun heard this, he glanced at the astonished blacksmiths and said, Do you have the confidence to continue on the path of blacksmiths and become weapon refiners? Yi Chun had used the creation aura to improve the foundation of the blacksmiths and even gave them cultivation manuals. In fact, it was to let the blacksmiths obtain the qualifications to become weapon refiners. If Yi Chun didn't prepare anything for the blacksmiths, they wouldn't be able to become weapon refiners even if they worked themselves to death. When Yi Chun finished his words, the 10 blacksmiths were stunned again. They didn't know what a weapon refiner was before, but now their lord, Yi Chun, had told them. Naturally, they had a preliminary judgment in their hearts. After coming back to their senses, the 10 blacksmiths looked at each other, then simultaneously looked at Yi Chun and bowed with great excitement. You of Beach, Lord you of Beach, we are willing to continue on the path of blacksmiths, and we are also willing to become weapon refiners. At this moment, it would be strange if the 10 blacksmiths still didn't understand why Yi Chun had given them cultivation manuals. In fact, they also didn't expect that such a great opportunity would fall on their heads out of nowhere. Excitement, and gratitude. These were the thoughts in the blacksmiths' hearts at this moment. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with satisfaction and then said, "In that case, learn the cultivation manual. Later, I will bring you to my world. Over there, you have to work hard to cultivate and break through to the mortal evolution state as soon as possible. Then, you can begin to forge spirit weapons. During this process, there might be many situations of failure. Don't be afraid and don't be nervous. Do your best to forge. As long as you can successfully refine spirit artifacts, you will become qualified artifact refiners, and you will be worthy of my continued training." When the 10 blacksmiths heard this, their hearts trembled in their hearts. In the next second, the 10 blacksmiths didn't even think as they knelt on the ground with a bang. Then, they excitedly kowtowed to Yi Chun. "We swear that we will become weapon refiners even if we die. We won't let down you of Beach's nurturing." When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with satisfaction and then said, very good. Learn the cultivation method." "Yes, you of Beach." When the 10 blacksmiths heard this, they nodded heavily and got up to pick up the cultivation manual and chose to learn it. When Yi Chun saw this, he waved his right hand, and 10 two-world stones appeared in an instant. Then, Yi Chun threw them in front of the 10 blacksmiths. When the blacksmiths saw this, they hurriedly reached out to catch it, and then chose to use it with excitement. The blacksmiths didn't know what the 2 world stones were, but they had a feeling that if they used this, they would be able to follow their Lord Yu of Beach to another world. For them, who were at the bottom of the social ladder, this was undoubtedly a great recognition and a great surprise. After all, those who could go to the real world were all capable subordinates of Yi Chun. This was already known in the reincarnation immortal city. Now, as blacksmiths, they had obtained the right to be envied by countless people. How could they not be happy? How could they not be excited? When the 2 world stones turned into light balls and merged into the bodies of the 10 blacksmiths, they looked directly at Yi Chun and then bowed solemnly to Yi Chun. "We swear to follow the Lord until death. If we violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy us." When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "Hold each other's hands and don't resist. I'll take you to the world where I live." When the 10 blacksmiths heard this, they hurriedly bowed and said loudly, "Yes, you of Beach." When the blacksmiths finished speaking, they held each other's hands. When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled slightly. Then, he looked at Mi Zhu and Sun Qing and said, "Quickly deal with what I've asked you to do. I'll be back soon." "Yes, my lord." Mi Zhu and Sun Qing hurriedly bowed and said. Yi Chun nodded. Then he stretched out his right hand and grabbed one of the blacksmith's shoulders instantly. In the next second, Yi Chun took the 10 blacksmiths and disappeared from the main hall of the Castellan's mansion. In the real world, in the main hall of the Castellan's mansion in the reincarnation city, 10 golden lights appeared out of thin air. Then, 10 men dressed as blacksmiths suddenly appeared in the main hall of the Castellan's mansion. At this moment, the door of the diamond grade game capsule creaked open. In the next second, Yi Chun opened his eyes and stood up from the game capsule. When the 10 blacksmiths saw Yi Chun stand up from the diamond grade game capsule, They hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and bowed loudly. "Greetings, Your Excellency Yu of Beach." When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled and nodded. Then he said, "This is the world I live in. All of you should work hard and cultivate. Don't go out of the city." "Yes, Your Excellency Yu of Beach." When the 10 blacksmiths heard this, they nodded heavily and bowed loudly. When Yi Chun heard this, he was about to ask the blacksmiths to leave and take a look at the samsara city in the real world. However, he suddenly remembered that there was no blacksmith shop in the real world. When he came back to his senses, Yi Chun took out the blacksmith shop, true, God grade, blueprint with his mind. The blacksmith shop, true, God rank, blueprint was something Yi Chun had obtained a long time ago. However, Yi Chun had been busy all this time, and the blacksmith shop wasn't needed in the real world for the time being. Therefore, Yi Chun had kept it in his storage space and never used it. Towards the end, Yi Chun had even forgotten about the blacksmith shop, true, God grade, blueprint. Now, Yi Chun had brought the blacksmiths to the real world and was preparing to train them into weapon forgers. Naturally, he needed a blacksmith shop. It was also because of this that Yi Chun suddenly remembered the blacksmith shop, true, God grade, blueprint that had been almost forgotten. Looking at the blacksmith shop blueprint in his hand, Yi Chun was stunned. True, items could be used in the real world. But what the hell was God grade? How could there be a God grade blacksmith shop? Yi Chun had never seen a God grade blacksmith shop in his previous life. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not be so confused. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but look at the God grade blacksmith shop blueprint again. After confirming that there was no introduction on it, Yi Chun chose to use it. Ding! Player Yi Chun has successfully used the blacksmith shop, true, God grade, blueprint. A God grade blacksmith shop has been added to Samsara City. Chapter 723. As soon as the system's notification ended, a quaint blacksmith shop appeared out of thin air in Samsara City. At the same time, Yi Chun's primordial spirit moved, and his huge consciousness instantly locked onto the god-level blacksmith shop that had just appeared. When Yi Chun's consciousness finished checking the attributes of the god-level blacksmith shop, his eyes widened. F***CK, this divine blacksmith shop is F***King insane. Blacksmith shop, god-level special building, forging success rate, plus 100 permanently. Special features. 1. Enchantment. Every time a piece of equipment is forged, there's a certain chance that a special attribute will be added to the equipment. 2. Practice makes perfect. Every time a piece of equipment is forged, forging proficiency will be greatly increased. 3. Skill blacksmith. The upper limit of the equipment that can be forged will be increased by 3. 4. Blessing of the craftsman god. Every time a piece of equipment is successfully forged, there's a certain chance that the equipment's grade will be increased by 1. 5. Can be upgraded to a god-level crafting room. Requires 10 million divine weapons. Yi Chun had thought that the god-level blacksmith shop would not be simple, but Yi Chun had never thought that it would be this crazy. Take the god-level blacksmith shop's basic attribute, the forging success rate, plus 100 permanently, as an example. As long as a blacksmith could enter the god-level blacksmith shop, he would be blessed with this attribute. Then, no matter what equipment he forged, he would not fail. Even if the blacksmith was the worst blacksmith in existence, the result would still be the same. Of course, this was on the premise that the equipment that the blacksmith wanted to forge could not exceed the highest grade that the god-level blacksmith shop could support. For example, the highest grade that the god-level blacksmith shop could forge was a magic weapon. If a blacksmith wanted to use the god-level blacksmith shop to forge a divine weapon, he would not be able to succeed. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that this 100% success rate was really crazy. One had to know that even ordinary blacksmiths in the mortal world did not have a 100% success rate when forging ordinary equipment in the mortal world. However, the god-level blacksmith shop could directly give all blacksmiths a 100% success rate. One could imagine how crazy this god-level blacksmith shop was. And this was only the basic attributes of the god-level blacksmith shop. If the special features of the god-level blacksmith shop were included, it would be even more crazy. For example, The first special feature of the god-level blacksmith shop, enchantment. This was actually equivalent to the ability of enchanters that only appeared in the Great Desolate World. To be more precise, the equipment forged in the Divine Blacksmith Shop had a chance of obtaining special attributes such as attack plus 100, skill level plus 10, bloodthirst plus 100, strength plus 1000, and so on. Originally, this was an ability that only enchanters possessed. However, Yi-Chin did not need any enchanters at all. As long as one forged a piece of equipment in a divine smithy, there was a chance that the forged equipment would gain this special attribute. Moreover, it wouldn't cost any enchantment materials. From this, it could be seen that the first feature of the Divine Blacksmith Shop was extremely powerful. As for the second characteristic of the Divine Blacksmith Shop, practice makes perfect. It could save a lot of time for the blacksmith to cultivate and allow the blacksmith to advance quickly. As for the third characteristic of the Divine Blacksmith Shop, skilled craftsman, it was no different from sending charcoal in snowy weather to Yi-Chun. This was because ordinary blacksmith shops could only forge heaven-grade weapons at most. It was impossible to forge magic artifacts, spirit artifacts, and so on. Originally, Yi-Chun thought that after the blacksmiths advanced to the mortal evolution state, he would lend the Connate Spirit Treasure Fire Spirit Pearl to the blacksmiths so that they could use the flames released by the Connate Spirit Treasure Fire Spirit Pearl to forge spirit artifacts. After all, the reason why the blacksmith shops could not forge heaven-grade and above equipment was because of the furnace fire. With the Fire Spirit Pearl, it was difficult not to raise the grade of the furnace fire. However, now, Yi-Chin did not have to go through so much trouble. This was because the highest grade of equipment that could be forged in a divine blacksmith shop was not the highest grade that could be forged in ordinary blacksmith shops, which was heaven grade. Instead, it was a magic treasure. This was only the benefits that the third characteristic could bring to Yi-Chun. If the fourth and fifth characteristics were included, it would be so powerful that no one would have any friends. Take the fourth characteristic, the blessing of the craftsman god, for example. Any equipment forged by the Divine Blacksmith Shop might be upgraded by 1 grade. This meant that if the blacksmiths under Yi-Chun wanted to forge spirit artifacts, they might be able to forge magic treasures under the blessing of the craftsman god. As for the fifth characteristic of the Divine Blacksmith Shop, it did not seem special at first glance. However, from the ability of the Divine Blacksmith Shop, it was not difficult to see what kind of existence the Divine Blacksmith Room would be. To be more precise, once the Divine Blacksmith Shop was upgraded to the Divine Blacksmith Room, it would only be more powerful. After all, this was a building after the upgrade. Regardless of whether it was ability or attributes, it would be greatly improved. To Yi-Chun, this was undoubtedly what he wanted to see the most. This was because Yi-Chun was not sure if he could forge the blueprint of the Divine Blacksmith Room. With this feature of being able to upgrade, everything became simple. As long as Yi-Chun could provide 10 million godly artifacts, the Divine Blacksmith Shop could be upgraded to the Divine Blacksmith Room. At first glance, the gains did not make up for the losses. This was because he had to pay 10 million godly artifacts. However, this was not difficult for Yi-Chun. After all, Yi-Chun had the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth. Equipment that had been refined by the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth would be upgraded. Therefore, if Yi-Chun wanted to obtain 10 million godly artifacts, he only needed 10 million magic treasures. To obtain 10 million magic treasures, Yi-Chun could either forge the magic treasure blueprint and let the blacksmiths forge it in the Divine Blacksmith Shop or kill monsters. Regardless of whether it was the former or the latter, it was not difficult for Yi-Chun to equip his subordinates with immortal artifacts before his ascension. It was also because of this that Yi-Chun was so excited and happy. He did not expect the Divine Blacksmith Shop's function to be so powerful. What the F***CK? This feels great. Right, I remember there is still a Divine Pharmacy blueprint. Thinking of this, Yi-Chin's eyes suddenly lit up. Then, with a thought, the pharmacy blueprint, True Divine, appeared in Yi-Chin's hands. As Yi-Chin looked at the Divine Herb Store blueprint in his hands, his mood instantly became even more carefree. Damn, the pharmacy blueprint ability was probably similar to the blacksmith shop's ability. Thinking of this, Yi-Chin chose to use it without hesitation. In the next second, the system's notification sounded. Ding! Player Yichun successfully used the blacksmith shop. True, divine, blueprint. A divine blacksmith shop has been added to Samsara City. As soon as the system's notification ended, a pharmacy building appeared in Samsara City. Sensing this, Yichun hurriedly used his divine sense to check it out. When Yichun saw the pharmacy blueprint's attributes, he could not help but laugh wildly. How awesome! Pharmacy, divine special building. Success rate of refining medicine. Permanent plus 100. Special features. 1. Strong. Every time you refine medicine, there is a certain chance of increasing the medicinal effect of the medicine. 2. Practice makes perfect. Every time you refine medicine, your proficiency in refining medicine will be greatly increased. 3. Skilled craftsman. The upper limit of the pills you can refine will be increased by 3. 4. Divine alchemist blessing. Every time you refine medicine, there is a certain chance of increasing the grade of the medicine by 1. 5. Can be upgraded to a divine alchemy room. Requires 10 million divine weapons. The pharmacy blueprint's attributes were not much different from the blacksmith shops. Most importantly, the pharmacy blueprint could be upgraded to a divine alchemy room. And to upgrade to a divine alchemy room, it only required 10 million divine weapons. This might be a headache for others, but Yichun, who had the cauldron of heaven and earth, would not care about this. And this was the main reason why Yichun was so excited when he saw the pharmacy blueprint's attributes. Yichun laughed for a while before he stopped. Then he frowned. Damn it, there were only doctors in Samsara Immortal City. There were no pharmacists. No, there were pharmacists. The Nanhua old deity was a pharmacist. But he could not accept him now, or else the heavenly tribulation would appear. Then he would have to ascend even if he did not want to. Chapter 724. Thinking of this, Yichun could not help but frown again. Yichun really wanted to use the godly tier potion shop right now. After all, it would be a waste if he didn't use it. But no matter how much Yichun thought about it, it was useless, because Nanhua Old Deity was the only pharmacist in Reincarnation Immortal City. The others were all doctors who didn't have the ability to make medicine and couldn't use the godly tier potion shop. Nanhua Old Deity couldn't use the godly tier potion shop before he became Yichun's real subordinate. The reason was simple. Only Yichun's subordinates could use the godly tier potion shop. Nanhua Old Deity was only a resident of Reincarnation Immortal City, not even a commoner, so he couldn't use the godly tier potion shop. Subduing the Nanhua Old Immortal was not an option for the current Yichun. Nanhua Old Deity was a trap set by the heavenly Tao of the Three Kingdoms beginners area for Yichun. If Yichun dared to subdue Nanhua Old Deity, he would attract a special heavenly tribulation. If Yichun failed the tribulation, Yichun would suffer great losses. But if he did, Yichun would be forced to ascend to the untainted land. Then Yichun's plan in the Three Kingdoms beginners area would fail. Old Immortal Nanhua had already hinted to Yichun about this when he expressed his willingness to submit to Yichun. Yichun knew it very well, so Yichun couldn't subdue Nanhua Old Deity, who had already settled down in Reincarnation Immortal City. F***CK, let be. It won't be long before Dongda's chaos breaks out and the era of dukes fighting for hegemony begins. At that time, I can send out my troops and conquer the world. Then, I can establish a kingdom and ascend. Then I can subdue Nanhua Old Deity. Now wait, what F***CK? I almost forgot about him. Other than Nanhua Old Immortal, Zwi, and Ug, who I killed, there was also Huata in the beginner's area of the Three Kingdoms. Thinking of this, Yichun's eyes lit up. Damn it, when I get back to the game world, I'll order my men to search for Huata. No matter how good he is at running, he won't be able to escape from me. Huata, on the other hand, was not really afraid of being found, so he ran everywhere. His goal was to save the people, so he wandered around. Wherever there was a disaster, he would go. He did not have a fixed place to stay. Thinking of this, Yichun couldn't help but smirk. He then looked at the 10 blacksmiths in the hall, who were quietly waiting for orders. Familiarize yourselves with Samsara City. If you need anything, you can ask Zhou Song for help. Yes, you Lord Beach. When the blacksmiths heard this, they hurriedly bowed and walked out of the door together. At this moment, flaming tiger Yilin, treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, golden-haired monkey, tortoise with the blood of the black tortoise, and Zhou Tsang, who was guarding Samsara City in the real world, entered the door one after another. Once they arrived at the main hall, Zhou Tsang bowed respectfully to Yi Chun. "Greetings, my lord." At the same time, flaming tiger Yilin, treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, golden-haired monkey, and tortoise all bowed to Yi Chun. "Brother, master." When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled and nodded. He then looked at Zhou Tsang and asked, "Have you gotten used to this world?" "My lord, it is my great fortune to be able to guard Samsara City for my lord in this world. I don't find it hard or tiring at all." When Zhou Tsang heard this, he immediately bowed gratefully. In the real world, Samsara City had an unbelievably high concentration of heaven and earth spirit chi. In just 1 or 2 days, Zhou Tsang's power, which had advanced to the mortal evolution state due to his trip to the secret realm in the underground palace, had increased by another notch. How could Zhou Tsang not get used to guarding Samsara City in the real world? In fact, at this moment, Zhou Tsang was even more excited and agitated than when he received the order to guard Samsara City in the real world. This was because the difference in power between him and the second-rate generals such as Zhao Yun, Dian Xiong, and Guan Xiaoyu would rapidly shrink. Hearing Zhou Tsang's indescribably excited words, Yi Chun chuckled and nodded. Then he said, "When the current batch of soldiers guarding Samsara City have all advanced to the mortal evolution state, send them back to that world and replace them with a new batch." In Yi Chun's Samsara City army, there were still many soldiers whose cultivation states were not high, especially those who guarded Samsara City in the game world during the Golden Turban Rebellion. Because they did not participate in the killing on the battlefield, they did not gain much experience. As a result, their power did not increase much after the Golden Turban Rebellion and the end of the demon invasion. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not have chosen the soldiers whose cultivation states were the weakest in the Samsara City army to guard Samsara City in the real world. To be more precise, Yi Chun's decision was actually a disguised form of training for the soldiers, and it was a perverted training for the soldiers. After all, in the real world, the strength of the soldiers in Samsara City would soar rapidly due to the dense heaven and earth spirit chi here. When Zhou Tsang heard Yi Chun's order, he quickly bowed and said, "Yes, my lord." When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at the obedient flaming tiger Yilin who came to his side and said, "I've prepared something good for you." With that, Yi Chun used his mind, and the divine beast advancement scroll appeared in Yi Chun's hands instantly. The divine beast advancement scroll was a reward that Yi Chun obtained from the secret realm of the underground palace. However, there was only one scroll. However, Yi Chun did not hesitate in the slightest as to who to give it to. To be more precise, Yi Chun would definitely use the divine beast advancement scroll on the flaming tiger Yilin. As for the reason, it was very simple. The flaming tiger Yilin had been following Yi Chun since a long time ago. She had protected Yi Chun's body in the real world and had made great contributions to him. Yi Chun would not give up on the flaming tiger Yilin just because the tortoise with the blood of the black tortoise might become more powerful after it advanced into a divine beast. If such a thing happened to someone else, it was very likely that they would make a decision contrary to Yi Chun's. However, Yi Chun would not do so. When the flaming tiger Yilin saw the divine beast advancement scroll in Yi Chun's hands, a sense of déjà vu instantly appeared in her heart. At this moment, the flaming tiger Yilin was stunned. When she came to her senses, the flaming tiger Yilin's big eyes suddenly lit up. Then, she looked at Yi Chun and asked with a longing face, "Brother, this is a divine beast advancement scroll." When Yi Chun heard the strong longing in the flaming tiger Yilin's words, he shook his head helplessly and said, "It's a divine beast advancement scroll." As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the flaming tiger Yilin immediately widened her eyes in excitement. On the other hand, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise with the blood of the black tortoise were all stunned. At this moment, Yi Chen casually handed the divine beast advancement scroll to the flaming tiger Yi Lin. "Hurry up and use it." As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, the flaming tiger Yi Lin nodded without hesitation and directly used the divine beast advancement scroll. As for modesty, it was a joke. The flaming tiger Yi Lin was not stupid. She would not give up the opportunity to become a divine beast and give it to the 3 pets of intelligence who had followed Yi Chen even later than she had. The moment the flaming tiger Yi Lin chose to use the divine beast advancement scroll, the divine beast advancement scroll turned into a ball of white light and rushed toward the flaming tiger Yi Lin, instantly wrapping her up tightly. Roar! A tiger's roar filled with excitement instantly rang out. As time passed, an extremely strong pressure suddenly rose from the flaming tiger Yi Lin's body. In an instant, it covered a radius of 50 kilometers around Samsara City and continued to spread out into the distance. At the same time, the demon clan soldiers who had come out of nowhere within 50 kilometers of Samsara City were all killed instantly. Among them, regardless of whether they were in the game world or those who had already gone offline, all of them died on the spot without exception. As for the demon clan soldiers who were 50 kilometers away, as long as they were covered by the pressure of the flaming tiger Yi Lin, they were either instantly awakened and killed or were directly stunned on the spot and killed. Among them, there were many demon clan soldiers who had attacked the players' territories and the safe cities that had lost their protective shields. These soldiers were also directly killed by the powerful pressure of the flaming tiger Yi Lin's divine beast advancement scroll. After 100 kilometers, the situation took a turn for the better when the demon clan soldiers were directly killed by the powerful pressure of the flaming tiger Yi Lin's divine beast advancement scroll. But even so, these demon clan soldiers were either vomiting blood or being crippled. The rest, without exception, ran wildly into the distance with all their might. Rumble, thousands of beasts galloped and the earth rumbled. More and more demon clan soldiers were frightened by the pressure of the flaming tiger Yi Lin's divine beast advancement scroll. Then, one by one, they left their lairs in an inexplicable panic and ran wildly into the distance. Chapter 725. The goblin race minions fled for their lives. The human players who were fighting with the goblin race minions stared at the corpses of the goblin race minions in front of them and in the distance with their mouths agape. They were puzzled, and then deeply shocked. They had no idea why the goblin race minions would suddenly die and why the ones who were still alive would turn tail and flee. This abnormal phenomenon left the players dumbfounded, but they didn't know what was going on. In fact, if it weren't for Yi Chen soldiers in Samsara City, Yin Hu and Yi Lin purposely restraining their auras against the humans, these players would have immediately understood why the shifter race was fleeing for their lives. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the flaming tiger Yi Lin had successfully evolved into a divine beast. In the real world, Samsara City, main hall of the Castellan's mansion. After using the divine beast advancement scroll, the flaming tiger Yi Lin transformed back into its original form, a gigantic tiger. Time passed slowly. When the divine beast aura emitted by the flaming tiger Yi Lin reached its peak, the flaming tiger Yi Lin lifted its head and let out an earth-shattering roar. Roar! After the tiger roar that was filled with joy ended, the light emitted by the divine beast advancement scroll immediately dissipated, revealing the new Yinhu Yi Lin. Seeing Yinhu and Yi Lin's completely changed appearance, Yi Chen could not help but be stunned. It was the complete opposite of before. Yinhu's body and head changed from the alternating black and white color to a fiery red color. The tiger ears and 4 tiger claws also changed from a fiery red color to alternating black and white. Yi Lin should have the white tiger bloodline. Why did she look less like a white tiger after evolving into a divine beast? At this thought, Yi Chen looked at the flaming tiger Yi Lin's attribute panel. Flaming tiger, divine beast can grow, technique. White tiger 7 kill technique, wind riding technique, fire riding technique, Phoenix Immortal Technique. Technique 1. Fireball 2. Prairie Fire 3. Tiger Roar 4. Cloud Ride 5. Fiery Rebirth 6. Sealed. Owner. Yi-Chun. Yi-Chun's eyes lit up when he saw this. She had evolved into a divine beast and learned another technique, the Phoenix Immortal Technique of the Phoenix Clan. She had also activated the 5th sealed technique, the innate Phoenix Immortal Technique, Fiery Rebirth. Holy shit, what kind of bloodline did Yi Lin have? Not only did she have the characteristics of the White Tiger, but she also had the characteristics of the Phoenix Clan. This was going against the heavens. No, Yi Lin could still continue to grow. Her goal was not to become a divine beast. Thinking of this, Yi-Chun was stunned. Holy shit, there were higher-level existences after divine beast? Could it be a god? Of God. Could be a creature of God, damn it. I don't know much about divine beasts. Otherwise, I would have known, but Yi Lin at least. At the very of Yi race. Thinking of this, Yi-Chun raised his eyebrows. Not bad, not bad. The stronger Yi Lin was, the better. The crazier, the better. Flaming Tiger Yi Lin was the first spiritual pet that Yi-Chun had subdued. It had followed Yi-Chun since the beginning and was willing to give up everything for him. It was also responsible for protecting Yi-Chun's physical body in the real world. Naturally, Yi-Chun liked to see Flaming Tiger Yi Lin become stronger. To be precise, the stronger and crazier the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin was, the more Yi-Chun liked it. This was because this was the only way Yi-Chun would be safer in the real world. This way, Yi-Chun could explore the game world with more peace of mind. He wouldn't have to go offline to solve any danger. For example, if the demon race gathered and attacked Samsara City, the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin wouldn't be able to stop the demon race either. At that time, Yi-Chun would have to go offline to solve this problem. It was because of this that Yi-Chun liked to see Yi Lin become stronger. The stronger, the better. After all, the stronger Flaming Tiger and Yi Lin were, the more powerful they could help Yi-Chun get rid of powerful enemies. Yi-Chun wouldn't have to leave the game world from time to time to deal with problems in the real world. Just as Yi-Chun thought of this, the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin opened its eyes and ran to Yi-Chun. It rubbed its head affectionately against Yi-Chun's face. At this moment, the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin was very excited. It was because it had become a divine beast. She was very grateful to her master, Yi-Chun, for everything that he had done for her. Although she was still young, she wasn't stupid. She knew one thing very well. If it wasn't for Yi-Chun, not only would her strength increase be as slow as a snail, even becoming an immortal beast might be just a fantasy. But now, with Yi-Chun's help, she had advanced in a short time. She had become a divine beast that many immortal beasts couldn't reach in their lifetime. To the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, this was undoubtedly a great gift. Therefore, while the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin was excited, she was also very grateful to Yi-Chun. Looking at the excited Flaming Tiger Yi Lin, Yi-Chun couldn't help but smile. Then he rubbed the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin's head and said, "Since you've become a divine beast, you've become a divine beast. Since you've become a divine beast, then cultivate well and strive to become the strongest existence among the divine beasts." When the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin heard this, a red light flashed, and she instantly transformed into her previous lowly form. In the next second, the Flaming Tiger Yi Lin threw herself into Yi-Chun's arms and said with a serious expression, "Brother, thank you. I'll definitely work hard to cultivate. I won't let you down." Okay, when Yi-Chun heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Then, he looked at the treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise with the black tortoise's bloodline. In the next second, with a thought from Yi-Chun, 3 fairy pet advancement scrolls instantly appeared in Yi-Chun's hands. After seeing the 3 fairy pet advancement scrolls in Yi-Chun's hands, the eyes of the treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise beside Yi-Chun lit up. Just as the 3 spiritual pets' eyes were filled with anticipation, Yi-Chun casually threw the 3 fairy pet advancement scrolls in front of the treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise. After seeing the fairy pet advancement scrolls in front of them, the treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise involuntarily looked at Yi Chun and then shouted in trembling voices, "Brother, master." This is, hearing the three pets' disbelief and anticipation, Yi Chun smiled faintly and said, "That's right, I'm not sure. Use it and you'll become immortal beasts." "Thank you, brother, master." When the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise heard this, they were extremely excited. Then, they hurriedly bowed towards Yi Chun. After saying that, the three pets did not hesitate to pick up the Immortal Pet Advancement Scroll and use it. At this moment, three balls of light suddenly burst out from the Fairy Pet Advancement Scrolls and then firmly wrapped the three spiritual pets. In the next second, three strong waves of pressure instantly appeared from the three spiritual pets and then rose again and again. Sensing the changes in themselves, the three spiritual pets could not help but roar to the sky. Roar. At this moment, the pressure belonging to immortal beasts rose and then spread out from the hall of the city governor's mansion in Samsara City. Time passed little by little. When the pressure of immortal beasts on the three spiritual pets reached its peak, it instantly stopped and then disappeared without a trace. In the next second, the balls of light disappeared. The treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise, who had become immortal beasts, all looked at Yi Chun and then bowed to Yi Chun solemnly. "Thank you, brother, master, for your gift." Chapter 726. When Yi Chun heard the three pets' words of gratitude and excitement, he chuckled and nodded, then said, "Thank you. The same goes for you. Work hard on your cultivation. The safety of Samsara City will be in your hands." The treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise had all evolved into immortal beasts. When they cultivated, they would definitely be faster than the soldiers of Samsara City. It was for this reason that Yi Chun said this to the three pets. As for the purpose, it was naturally to let the three pets understand one thing clearly. Samsara City in the real world was very important, and Yi Chun valued it very much. Therefore, as Yi Chun's pets of intelligence, they had to follow Yi Chun's orders wholeheartedly. They could not slack off in the slightest. In fact, even if Yi Chun did not say this, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise, who had the blood of the black tortoise, would cultivate as hard as they could to protect Yi Chun's body in the real world. This was because of Yi Chun that they could evolve into divine beasts. Without the immortal pet level-up scroll that Yi Chun had given them, even if two of them had the blood of the six-eared macaque and the other had the blood of the black tortoise, they would not be able to evolve into immortal beasts so quickly. It should be noted that there was only a one-level difference between spiritual beasts and immortal beasts. However, 99% of the spiritual beasts that wanted to make the leap failed. Among these failed spiritual beasts, there were countless spiritual beasts with the blood of divine beasts. It was for this reason that the successful treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise were grateful to Yi Chun from the bottom of their hearts. They were grateful to Yi Chun and were willing to do anything for Yi Chun. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden-haired monkey, and the tortoise nodded solemnly in unison. "Yes, brother, master." Hearing this, Yi Chun nodded with satisfaction. Then, with a thought, for magic swords appeared beside Yi Chun in an instant. Yi Chun glanced at the four long swords that exuded a chilling aura. These swords are all magic treasures. Their power is not bad. Each of you will have one. "Thank you, big brother master." The flaming tiger Yilin, the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu, the golden monkey, and the tortoise's eyes lit up when they heard this. Clearly, they all knew what grade a magic treasure sword was. They also knew what grade the weapons in the hands of the human and shifter players were. Otherwise, why would they be so happy? When Yi Chun heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Then, he threw the four magic treasure-level swords to the four pets. Yi Chun waited for the four beasts to take them, then dripped their blood on them to claim ownership. With a thought, he stepped forward. In the next second, Yi Chen walked into the distorted space and disappeared. Shanghai, one of the mysterious forces that had been wiped out by Yi Chen, the Li clan's territory, Dark Moon Town. The space above was suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi Chen stepped forward and appeared here. Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows as he glanced at the messy Dark Moon Town. After that, he directly headed towards the Li clan's secret realm. Naturally, Yi Chen came here to take away the 2 mountains of transcendental spirit stones that had not reached the immortal grade. After all, Yi Chen was now preparing to train blacksmiths. Without refining materials, even if the blacksmiths had the support of the divine blacksmith shop, they would not be able to forge spiritual weapons. Just as Yi Chen arrived at the secret realm's entrance, a man covered in blood suddenly rushed out of the secret realm. Then, with a bang, he fell to the ground. Cough, 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 cough. The moment the man fell, he coughed violently. Large mouthfuls of blood sprayed out, as if they were free. When Yi Chen saw this, he frowned. Someone went to the secret realm. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the man who had fallen to the ground suddenly looked at Yi Chen and shouted with pleading eyes. Save me! Save me! When Yi Chen heard this, he glanced at the seriously injured man. Then, he walked toward the secret realm with a gloomy face. Yi Chen did not care whether the man was dead or alive. What Yi Chen cared about was how long the secret realm had been discovered and how many refining materials had been taken away. When a man saw that Yi Chen was ignoring him, he panicked and shouted weakly at Yi Chen. Don't go. Save me. I'll give you money. As soon as the man finished speaking, 2 men wearing gold-grade suits and holding long swords suddenly rushed out of the secret realm. In the blink of an eye, they met Yi Chen. At this moment, the 2 men holding long swords slashed at Yi Chen without hesitation. When Yi Chen, who was walking toward the secret realm, saw this, he frowned slightly. Then, he raised his right hand and threw out 2 slaps. Slap, slap. 2 extremely violent slaps were heard instantly. In the next second, the 2 men who attacked Yi Chen were instantly sent flying backward. Then, they quickly flew toward the sky behind them. In the blink of an eye, 2 explosions were heard in midair. Bang, bang. The heads of the 2 men who were sent flying by Yi Chen's slap directly exploded in midair. At this moment, red blood mixed with white brain matter flew in all directions. Bang, bang. The 2 headless corpses fell heavily to the ground. When a man who had asked Yi Chen for help saw this, he could not help but be stunned. Then he shuddered. He had never seen the scene of a person's head exploding from a slap. At this moment, a feeling of disbelief and intense panic appeared in the man's heart. In the blink of an eye, the seriously injured man thought of something. He hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and shouted, You have Beach, Master you have Beach. Please save me. I am willing to be your slave. When Yi Chen heard this, he smiled coldly and walked straight toward the secret realm. Yi Chen had once saved someone in his previous life. At that time, Yi Chen had accidentally saved someone who was seriously injured and unable to move, saving him from the fate of being eaten by a demonic beast. Unfortunately, in the end, Yi Chen did not even get a word of thanks. Instead, he was used as cannon fodder to attack the territory of a demon leader. In the words of the person that Yi Chen had saved, this was a gift, and Yi Chen should be content with it. It was very melodramatic, but this was Yi Chen's memory from his previous life. Even if Yi Chen was reborn, he still remembered this incident. It was also because of what Yi Chen had seen and heard in his previous life, as well as his personal experience, that Yi Chen had become so brutal, so fierce, and so merciless in this life. In fact, any kind-hearted person would completely change their character after a few years in the Doomsday World. Because in the Doomsday World, there was no mercy, no sympathy. There was only mutual deception and all kinds of conspiracies. If one wanted to live and live well, one had to adapt to the cruel reality of the Doomsday World. To be precise, the Doomsday World was a world full of blood, violence, conspiracies, betrayal, death, and wails. If one wanted to survive in the Doomsday World, one had to adapt to the law of the jungle. As for those who could not adapt, such as those who still had a good heart in the doomsday world, if they did not die at the hands of demons, they would die at the hands of humans. It was very sad, but this was the truth. When a man saw that Yi Chun was ignoring him and was about to enter the secret realm, his expression changed. The next second, the man glared viciously at Yi Chun and then shouted at Yi Chun, miserably, Master, you have beached. I have a treasure. Chapter 7:27. Yi Chun, who was about to enter the mystic realm, immediately retracted his divine sense when he heard this. He stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the man. When he saw that Yi Chun had stopped and turned around to look at him, the man's eyes immediately revealed an "I knew it" look. However, he immediately hid it. He didn't dare to let Yi Chun know what he was thinking because that would make him lose his life even faster. After all, Yi Chun's cruelty, heartlessness, and viciousness had long been known by everyone. Although the man had never seen Yi Chun, he also knew how Yi Chun treated those who angered Yi Chun. He didn't want to anger Yi Chun and be killed by Yi Chun like those people who were mercilessly killed by Yi Chun. Of course, even if Yi Chun didn't do anything, he wouldn't be able to survive. One had to know that his body had been slashed at no less than 20 places by swords and sabers. There were even 5 places that had been pierced. Fresh blood flowed out, as if it was free. In just a short while, the ground was dyed red by his blood. The man was very clear about his current condition. He also knew that if he didn't get treatment immediately, he would definitely die. Therefore, he asked Yi Chun for help. This was because Yi Chun was the most powerful person in the human race. He was a powerhouse in the tribulation stage, and his abilities were extraordinary. Most importantly, Yi Chun was the only person who could save him at this moment. If even Yi Chun couldn't save him or didn't save him, then he would definitely die. However, just as the man thought that Yi Chun was moved by his offer, Yi Chun raised his left hand and pointed with his finger. Boom! 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 The sound of thunder shook heaven and earth. At the same time, a bolt of blue lightning as thick as an arm fell from the sky and struck the man's head. Boom! The man's body was instantly ignited by the violent lightning and then exploded. In the next second, pieces of charred flesh splattered in all directions and then fell all over the ground. Yi Chun glanced at the charred pieces of meat on the ground and curled his lips in disdain. Originally, Yi Chun did not plan to pay any attention to this heavily injured man. Who would have thought that this man did not want to die and used a treasure to ask Yi Chun for help? Of course, asking for help wasn't a big deal. Humans didn't want to die. This was normal. But that was not the main problem. The main problem was that the man should not have looked at Yi Chun viciously. Although the man hid very well, but no matter how hard he tried to hide, he could not hide from Yi Chun's spiritual consciousness. Yi Chun had sensed the man's unusual gaze, so he didn't hesitate to kill him. Although Yi Chun liked treasures and whatnot, Yi Chun wasn't someone who would put up with other people's clicks for the sake of treasures. He wasn't someone who would allow others to scheme against him after they got the chance. In fact, although Yi Chun was domineering, ruthless, and could even be said to be cruel, he had never killed indiscriminately. If the man hadn't looked at him viciously and had sincerely suggested using treasures in exchange for a chance for Yi Chun to save him, Yi Chun wouldn't have killed him directly. Unfortunately, this man didn't recognize reality at all. To be precise, not only was the man pitifully weak, but he also had unrealistic ideas and looked at him viciously. How could Yi Chun let him go when he sensed this? At this thought, Yi Chun's spiritual consciousness moved, and he looked directly at the items dropped from the man's storage space when he died. When Yi Chun's spiritual consciousness checked all the items dropped by the man, he couldn't help but frown. Could it be that this bastard was bluffing me when he said that he had treasures? Yi Chun guessed the answer as soon as he thought of this. That was because no matter how stupid the man Yi Chun killed was, he wouldn't have said that he had a treasure when he didn't have one. Could it be? At this thought, Yi Chun raised his right hand without hesitation and drew a talisman in the air. In the blink of an eye, 2 golden talisman characters filled with a mysterious aura appeared in the air and were reflected in Yi Chun's eyes. What Yi Chun drew in the air was naturally the talisman character for opening the sky eye. This way, he could see things that ordinary eyes couldn't see. Of course, if Yi Chun's cultivation base was high enough, or if he obtained some special treasure, he could use the sky eye ability without using talisman characters. However, Yi Chun still needed the talisman characters of the Chaos Talisman to enhance his eyes. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to open the sky eye. Just as Yi Chun's eyes emitted a golden light, a jet-black token that exuded a cold aura was reflected in Yi Chun's eyes. Yi Chun couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the token. This was Yi Chun raised his hand and sucked in. At the same time, the jet-black token that exuded a cold aura flew in front of Yi Chun's eyes. Yi Chun frowned slightly when he saw the token that was covered in bits of flesh and blood. He then raised his hand and pointed at the token. In the next second, a ball of flame appeared in the sky and burned all the flesh and blood on the token into nothingness. Yi Chun nodded in satisfaction when he saw this. He then summoned a ball of water and washed the token a few times before holding it in his hand. The moment Yi Chun held the token, the system's notification suddenly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining the Netherworld Pass. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun's eyes lit up. Holy shit! It's actually this Netherworld Pass. After use, it can forcefully open a passage to the Netherworld. After entering the Netherworld, one will not be restricted by the laws of the plane. The passage will last for 30 days. At first glance, the Netherworld Pass didn't seem to be anything special or useful. However, this was only relative to ordinary players. If it was for those who wanted to conquer the world and seize the heaven and earth's fortune, the result would be completely different. As for the reason, it was very simple. The heaven and earth's fortune wasn't only available in the Eldritch world, but also in the Netherworld. Of course, before Hutu's body reincarnated, the Netherworld didn't have such a function. To be precise, the heaven and earth's fortune in the Netherworld at this moment wasn't comparable to the heaven and earth's fortune in the Eldritch world. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that for someone like Yi Chun who walked the path of a monarch, he would definitely need to seize the luck of the world. Being able to obtain the Netherworld Passage token to freely enter the Netherworld was simply too great. One had to know that there was only one entrance to the Netherworld, but it was usually sealed. Under normal circumstances, if one wanted to enter the Netherworld and seize the heaven and earth's fortune in the Netherworld, they would have to forcefully attack the entrance of the Netherworld and then rush in to conquer the Netherworld. This way, the more territories they conquered, the more heaven and earth's fortune they would obtain. However, there were very few people who could succeed in doing so. This was because attacking the entrance of the Netherworld was equivalent to declaring war on the entire Netherworld. If one wasn't powerful enough, going there would be suicide. However, with the Netherworld Pass, it was different. As long as one used the Netherworld Pass, they would be able to obtain a safe passage into the Netherworld. There is no need to enter the Netherworld from the entrance of the Netherworld. Moreover, using this method to enter the Netherworld wouldn't be restricted by the laws of the Netherworld. To be precise, using the Netherworld Pass to enter the Netherworld, one wouldn't have to worry about their essence, chi, and spirit being constantly corroded by the laws of the Netherworld. They also didn't have to worry about their combat strength being suppressed and not being able to use 100%. In addition, they didn't have to worry about being assimilated by the laws of the Netherworld, losing their identity as living beings and becoming a member of the Netherworld. They also didn't have to worry about all the monsters in the Netherworld being able to smell the scent of living beings from thousands of miles away and then chase after them. Of course, there was a time limit. However, 30 days was enough for Yi Chun to do many things in the Netherworld. For example, he could conquer a large territory and take in a large group of subordinates from the Netherworld. Damn, I didn't think that the so-called treasure would actually be this in my previous life. I had only heard of this thing from others. I didn't think that I would obtain it now. Chapter 728. Thinking of this, The corners of Yi Chen's mouth couldn't help but curl up as he stored the Netherworld Passage token into his pocket world. The Netherworld Passage token could open a safe passage to the Netherworld. This was true, but Yi Chen didn't want to use the Netherworld Passage token now. Yi Chen was only at the Tribulation Passing stage at the moment. Although he far surpassed the majority of players, he really wasn't ranked in the Netherworld. If Yi Chen went to the Netherworld now, even if he was immune to the suppression and corrosion of the Netherworld Passage token, he wouldn't be able to go on a killing spree, and he wouldn't be able to command his army to conquer the Netherworld. After all, Yi Chen still had the strength of Yi Chen's subordinates. If he went, he would just be throwing his life away. To put it simply, going to the Netherworld now was purely looking for a beating. Yi Chen naturally wouldn't do that. Glancing at the Netherworld Passage token that was stored in his pocket world, Yi Chen suddenly frowned. Hold on, that bastard said that it's a treasure. To me, it's indeed a treasure. But to others, or even to those mysterious forces who have obtained the inheritance, it's simply a death pass. Once you enter, you can forget about ever coming back. Moreover, he could hear the system's notification when he held the Netherworld Passage token in his hand. In other words, that bastard knew that after using this token, he could go to the Netherworld. He probably hadn't gone there before, or else he wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Did he treat the Netherworld as some kind of treasure ground, or did he simply not know what the Netherworld Passage token was, but deliberately called it treasure? Or perhaps this Netherworld Passage token was something he'd just obtained from the Li clan's secret realm. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, a middle-aged man in blue clothes suddenly walked out from the secret realm's entrance. The moment Yi Chen noticed the middle-aged man also noticed Yi Chen. However, the middle-aged man's expression instantly changed, and he turned around without hesitation and walked towards the secret realm. When Yi Chen saw this, he raised his hand and pulled the middle-aged man to his side without hesitation. The middle-aged man, who had failed to enter the secret realm, turned pale, but he quickly returned to normal. Then, he bowed to Yi Chen, who had captured him. Gong Sun Qing pays his respects to you, Lord Beach. When Yi Chen heard this, his originally calm gaze instantly turned cold. In the next second, Yi Chen looked directly at Gong Sun Qing and asked, "What do you think? Who is Gong Sun Ji to you? Lord, you of Beach know my younger brother?" The middle-aged man was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Then, he looked at Yi Chen in astonishment and asked. When Yi Chen heard this, his eyes instantly turned extremely cold. At the same time, a violent killing intent erupted from Yi Chen's body. If the middle-aged man had said any other name, Yi Chen wouldn't have reacted too much. However, when the middle-aged man mentioned Gong Sun Ji's name, it was impossible for Yi Chen not to react. This was because in Yi Chen's previous life, Gong Sun Ji was the key person who had saved people out of kindness but ended up being used as cannon fodder. It was also because of this that Yi Chen directly asked the middle-aged man if he knew Gong Sun Ji after hearing his name. Of course, this was a grudge from his previous life. It hadn't happened in this life yet, but this didn't stop Yi Chen from wanting revenge. Previously, Yi Chen had thought of looking for Gong Sun Ji. As long as he found him, Yi Chen would kill him without hesitation. One was to avenge his previous life, and the other was to clear his mind. However, when Yi Chen was looking for special shifters, he also searched the place where he met Gong Sun Ji in his previous life. In the end, he didn't find anything. It was also because of this that Yi Chen temporarily shelved this idea. He planned to kill Gong Sun Ji when he met him in the future. Who would have thought that he would meet a middle-aged man named Gong Sun Qing in the Li clan's territory that had already been reduced to rubble? More importantly, this Gong Sun Qing was Gong Sun Ji's older brother. How could Yi Chen remain calm? It was also because of this that Yi Chen's violent killing intent erupted without any restraint. Gong Sun Qing, who thought that Yi Chen was the number one human, the number one player, and his younger brother's friend, instantly paled when he felt the violent killing intent emanating from Yi Chen. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Gong Sun Qing was instantly frightened by Yi Chen's violent killing intent and fell to the ground. In the next second, Gong Sun Qing looked at Yi Chen with a miserable expression and said, "You Lord Beach, this, is there some misunderstanding? My younger brother is only 3 years old." Gong Sun Qing's words were filled with confusion and grievance. No matter who heard it, they would have the feeling that Gong Sun Qing had been greatly wronged. When Yi Chen heard this, he coldly looked at Gong Sun Qing and shouted, "Cut the crap. Where is he? Also, based on your attire, you should be from a special family. Tell me the location of your base." It wasn't impossible that Gong Sun Qing had a 3-year-old younger brother. After all, before the fall of the meteor, there were plenty of old couples and young wives. Perhaps Gong Sun Qing's father found a mistress and gave birth to an even younger one. If it had been anyone else who said that he had a 3-year-old younger brother, Yi Chen wouldn't have taken it seriously. But since it was Gong Sun Qing who said this, Yi Chen simply wouldn't believe it. As for the reason, it wasn't because of Gong Sun Qing's name, but because Gong Sun Qing's expression had changed the moment he came out of the secret realm. Just this point alone was enough to show that there was something wrong with Gong Sun Qing. If you added on the fact that he had turned around and returned to the secret realm, and that there was no trace of blood on his body, it was even more obvious that there was something wrong with Gong Sun Qing. After all, the man Yi Chen had killed had been seriously injured, and 3 other men had chased him out of the secret realm. This meant that there had to have been a battle in the secret realm, and this battle had either been between factions or individuals. Regardless of which one it was, Gong Sun Qing, who had no trace of blood or injuries on his body, was no simple person. How could Yi Chen believe the words of such a person? When Gong Sun Qing heard Yi Chen's cold and murderous words, his originally miserable expression immediately twisted. However, Gong Sun Qing immediately returned to normal. He then looked at Yi Chen and said, "You Lord Beach, before my younger brother's great change. He lived abroad most of the time." After returning, the game started a few days later. Gong Sun Qing is certain that my younger brother has never met you Lord Beach. Why does you Lord Beach say that you want to kill my younger brother? When Yi Chen heard this, he laughed coldly and said, "There's no reason. I just want to kill him. You could do whatever you want. But if you give me the answer I want, I can at least preserve the Gong Sun tribe. If you don't, I'll find out who he is and eradicate him." Yi Chen really did have a reason, but how could Yi Chen say that it was a feud from his previous life? When Gong Sun Qing heard this, his face immediately paled. He also didn't expect Yi Chen to be so crude and unreasonable. 2 people who clearly didn't know each other, but one wanted to kill the other. If this wasn't nonsense, what was? At this moment, an answer suddenly appeared in the conflicted and worried Gong Sun Qing's heart. Could it be that bastard of a younger brother stole this person's girlfriend? That must be it. F***CK. When he thought of this, Gong Sun Qing almost cursed at his disappointing younger brother. F***CK. If he liked a woman, of all people, why did he have to like a woman that pervert Yi Chen took a fancy to? When he thought of this, Gong Sun Qing did his best to calm his surging anger. He then looked at Yi Chen and said solemnly, "You Lord Beach, no matter what my younger brother did wrong, as long as it doesn't involve a life and death feud, there's nothing that can't be resolved. Although Gong Sun Qing isn't some important person, I'm willing to apologize to you Lord Beach on behalf of my younger brother." After saying this, Gong Sun Qing waved his right hand, and a small wooden box instantly appeared beside him. A second later, Gong Sun Qing opened the wooden box and showed it to Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but frown and look at the small wooden box. When Yi Chen saw the pile of pitch-black tokens in the small wooden box, his eyes suddenly widened. Netherworld passage tokens, and in boxes at that. As expected, I guessed correctly, F***CK. Chapter 729. As soon as Yi Chen thought of this, he felt a strong sense of pain in his balls. The reason was very simple. Yi Chen could now make a clear judgment that the Nether Passage token came from the Li clan's mystic realm. As for the possibility that the Nether Passage token came from somewhere else, Yi Chen's judgment was wrong. That was impossible. After all, Gong Sun Qing was a member of the Gong Sun clan. No matter how stupid he was, he wouldn't go out with a box of Nether Passage tokens. Even if the members of the Gongsun clan or their followers had used the Nether Passage token and died in the Nether Realm, and Gongsun Qing discovered the consequences of using the Nether Passage token to enter the Nether Realm and came up with the idea of using the Nether Passage token to plot against others, he wouldn't casually carry a box of Nether Passage tokens with him, because one Nether Passage token was enough to plot against others, and the Gongsun clan wouldn't allow Gongsun Qing to do so. After all, what the Gongsun clan couldn't do didn't mean that others couldn't. For example, a force stronger than the Gongsun clan, or Yi Chun, the strongest man of the human race. If the Gongsun clan really used the Nether Passage token to plot against others, not only would they fail, but they would also benefit from it. After all, the Gongsun clan could directly kill the weak ones, and could only plot against the strong ones. Therefore, if the Gongsun clan had used the Nether Passage token before, they would only hide it completely instead of using it to plot against others, and they wouldn't allow a member of the Gongsun clan to use it to plot against someone stronger than the Gongsun clan. Because of this, it was impossible for Gongsun Qing to have used the Nether Passage token, let alone know the dangers of the Nether Realm. Therefore, the result was self-evident. Gongsun Qing had just obtained the Nether Passage token from the Li clan's mystic realm. Otherwise, Gongsun Qing wouldn't have left the Nether Passage token and wandered outside with so many Nether Passage tokens. And this was also the reason why Yi Chun had a headache just now. It should be known that when Yi Chun was in the Li clan's secret realm, he had used his divine sense to scan the secret realm several times after taking away those mountains of immortal-grade materials. After this kind of divine sense exploration, the probability of there being any hidden items was close to zero. However, it just so happened that Yi Chun ran into that nearly impossible probability. Otherwise, how could the Netherworld Passage token be obtained from the Li clan's secret realm? The heck, I'll have to use my heavens to check the surroundings the next time there's a dungeon. Lest I miss something like this, the Netherworld Passage token was a special item. It couldn't be seen with the naked eye or divine sense. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have missed the Netherworld Passage token. Of course, Yi Chun could see the Netherworld Passage token now, because Yi Chun had used the Heaven's Eye Technique rune in the Chaos Talisman. Otherwise, Yi Chun would have seen an empty box. Just as Yi Chun was feeling a headache, Gongsun Qing suddenly remembered that the Netherworld Passage token in the box was invisible. He hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and explained, "Lord Yu Beach, this box isn't empty. There's a batch of special items in it. Judging from their attributes, they should be used to open the passage to the Nether Realm. Gongsun Qing is willing to use this box of Netherworld Passage tokens to compensate for my brother's mistake. The Gongsun clan and the Li clan should both be clans that received special inheritances and opportunities before the meteor fell, right?" Yi Chun asked after glancing at Gongsun Qing. As soon as Yi Chun's irrelevant answer fell, Gongsun Qing's fawning expression instantly froze. However, it quickly returned to normal. At this moment, a thought called, "Yi Chun also received special inheritances before the meteor fell," appeared in Gongsun Qing's mind. The reason why Gongsun Qing had such a thought was that before the meteor fell, only the clans and factions that received inheritances and opportunities knew about it. Outsiders couldn't possibly know about it. But now, Yi Chun actually mentioned it. How could Gongsun Qing not think in this direction? No wonder Yi Chun was able to do so well right from the start of the game. It must be because the inheritances and opportunities he received were better than all the clans that received inheritances and opportunities. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. Thinking of this, Gongsun Qing's eyes couldn't help but reveal a look of envy and jealousy. However, it returned to normal in the blink of an eye. In the next second, Gongsun Qing looked at Yi Chun with a confused expression. "Lord Yu of Beach, what did you say?" When Yi Chun heard this, he glanced at Gongsun Qing and sneered. "You don't understand? Lord Yu of Beach, I really didn't hear you clearly just now." Gongsun Qing shuddered when he heard this. Then, he hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and said in a panic. When Yi Chun heard this, he nodded. Then, with a wave of his right hand, a long sword appeared in his right hand. Seeing Yi Chun suddenly take out a long sword, Gongsun Qing's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the long sword in Yi Chen's right hand pierced towards Gong Sun Qing's shoulder. With a poochie sound, the long sword pierced through Gong Sun Qing's shoulder effortlessly. The bloody tip of the sword came out from behind Gong Sun Qing's shoulder. In the next second, Gong Sun Qing suddenly let out a shrill cry. Ouch! Pain, heart-wrenching pain, wave after wave, attacked Gong Sun Qing's nerves endlessly. Then, Gong Sun Qing's body began to tremble involuntarily. His face also turned ghastly pale at this moment. Yi Chen glanced at Gong Sun Qing, who was howling miserably due to the intense pain and trembling. Then, he curled his lips in disdain and pulled back his right hand. With a poochie sound, the long sword left Gong Sun Qing's shoulder. Then, a gush of bright red blood spurted out. Speak, where's the Gong Sun clan's lair? Speak, and you have a chance to live. If you don't, you'll die. When Gong Sun Qing heard this, his already pale face turned even paler. To be more precise, it was deathly pale. He really didn't want to answer Yi Chen's question, but he didn't dare to delay at all. Because the result of delaying was that Yi Chen's sword would definitely pierce a hole or even countless holes in his body. Knowing this, Gong Sun Qing forced himself to endure the pain. Then, he looked at Yi Chen and said, Lord, you have beach that the underworld pass I took out is real. It's inside the box and can't be seen with the naked eye. If you don't believe me, feel it and you'll know. Gong Sun Qing didn't want to admit that the Gong Sun clan was some legendary clan and that they had obtained an inheritance and opportunity. He was even more unwilling to say where the Gong Sun clan was. In Gong Sun Qing's view, Yi Chen's question didn't have good intentions. If he said where the Gong Sun clan was, Gong Sun Qing felt that Yi Chen would very likely make a move on the Gong Sun clan. To be more precise, Yi Chen would not only start a massacre, but also steal the Gong Sun clan's inheritance and opportunity. Gong Sun Qing didn't want to see this happen, so he had to pretend, and he had to pretend very well. Unfortunately, he only pretended for a few seconds before he was rudely interrupted by Yi Chen. Moreover, it was very likely that this would continue. Therefore, Gong Sun Qing hurriedly took out the underworld pass. He wanted to use this in exchange for a chance to live, and it would be best if he could preserve the Gong Sun clan. Hearing this, Yi Chen glanced at Gong Sun Qing and then asked, Do you know how the Li clan was annihilated? Gong Sun Qing was stunned at first, and then his face suddenly changed. At this moment, the answer that Gong Sun Qing didn't want to see the most suddenly appeared in his heart. The Li clan was destroyed overnight, not by the monster race, but by Yi Chen. Thinking of this, Gong Sun Qing felt very unwell. This was because he had used a special teleportation tool to directly bring people here in order to obtain the resources that the Li clan had obtained before the meteor fell. But now, what did he hear? Yi Chen actually asked him, Do you know who destroyed the Li clan? Moreover, his attitude was very playful. No matter how stupid Gong Sun Qing was, he wouldn't think that Yi Chen asked him this because he wanted to avenge the Li clan. However, Gong Sun Qing didn't want to see this result. After all, the meaning behind Yi Chen's words, in Gong Sun Qing's opinion, was to tell him that everything in the Li clan's secret realm belonged to Yi Chen, and the Netherworld Passage tokens that he, Gong Sun Qing, had taken out also belonged to Yi Chen. Chapter 730. Thinking of this, Gong Sun Qing's originally pale face twisted in an instant. Originally, he had wanted to use the Netherworld Passage token to move Yi Chen, and then have Yi Chen let him, his brother, and the Gong Sun clan go. But now, Gong Sun Qing sadly discovered that this idea was destined to never come to fruition. If he had known, he wouldn't have said his real name. An indescribable sense of regret involuntarily appeared in Gong Sun Qing's heart, and then grew stronger and stronger. In fact, even if Gong Sun Qing hadn't said the truth, he couldn't have escaped, because Yi Chen had already guessed that the Netherworld Passage token might have come from the Li clan's secret territory from the heavily injured man, who was then killed by Yi Chen. Therefore, regardless of whether Gong Sun Qing had said his real name at the beginning, Yi Chen would have searched all the people in the secret territory of the Li clan. To be more precise, Yi Chen wouldn't let go of someone like Gong Sun Qing, who was obviously the leader, so easily. Of course, if no one called out Gong Sun Qing's real name, or if Gong Sun Qing himself didn't say his real name, Yi Chen wouldn't have connected him to his enemy from his previous life and wouldn't have pursued this matter. However, even if Yi Chen didn't pursue this matter, Yi Chen would still seek revenge from his previous life. Otherwise, Yi Chen would still feel somewhat uncomfortable in his heart. This might not be a big deal to ordinary people, but for someone like Yi Chen who had already reached the tribulation stage, this feeling of discomfort was absolutely unbearable. As for the reason, it was very simple. Heavenly tribulation. That's right, heavenly tribulation. When Yi Chen began his ascension tribulation and prepared to become an immortal, if he had any unpleasant thoughts in his heart, he would definitely attract inner demons. It was very dangerous to attract inner demons during the tribulation. Even if Yi Chen's cultivation was stronger than everyone else's, once an inner demon came, he would still have to resist it, even if he had a connate supreme treasure. This was because once the inner demon appeared, it would appear in Yi Chen's sea of consciousness, and it would directly target Yi Chen's soul attack. There was no way to defend against it at all. Once the inner demons appeared, they would be able to overcome them, and their will would become even stronger. However, if an accident were to happen, the best-case scenario would be that one's foundation would be damaged, and one's cultivation would regress, unable to advance any further. In the worst-case scenario, one's soul would be taken over by one's inner demons, and one would be reduced to a mindless zombie. Therefore, Yi Chen could not let go of his enemy from his previous life. Even if Yi Chen did not say his real name, Yi Chen could not give up. When Gong Sun Qing revealed a look of regret, Yi Chen glanced at his twisted face and asked, "What's wrong with you? Have you decided? Are you going to tell me or not? Lord you beach, if I tell you, can you spare Gong Sun clan?" Gong Sun Qing, who was secretly regretting his decision, immediately came back to his senses. He looked at Yi Chen and asked. When Yi Chen heard this, he glanced at Gong Sun Qing and said, "It depends on my mood." Yi Chen could tell what Gong Sun Qing meant. He wanted to abandon Gong Sun Ji and save the Gong Sun clan. If it were anyone else, they might have directly said yes so that Gong Sun Qing could tell them where the Gong Sun clan was located. But Yi Chen would not say this. This was because Yi Chen was at the tribulation transcendent stage, and he already had the special ability of words of law. Of course, words of law did not actually mean that every word Yi Chen said had to be true. If Yi Chen went back on his word, he would be punished by the laws of heaven and earth. Of course, the punishment would be insignificant. It would just be a little bit of bad luck, a drop in luck, and so on. After all, this was not a vow. But even if this punishment was insignificant, Yi Chen did not want to see it happen. It was for this reason that Yi Chen directly said that it would depend on his mood. In fact, Yi Chen had indeed thought about sparing the Gong Sun clan from the beginning. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have asked Gong Sun Qing to tell him the location of the Gong Sun clan's nest so honestly. That way, the Gong Sun clan might be saved. Unfortunately, Gong Sun Qing was not willing to say it at all. Although it was pardonable, it had nothing to do with Yi Chen. As long as Gong Sun Qing told him the truth, Yi Chen would do as he said. He would only kill Gong Sun Ji. As for the Gong Sun clan seeking revenge, that would be a joke. Even if they were given 10,000 guts, they would not dare to seek revenge on Yi Chen. Of course, it was very likely that they would plot against him, but Yi Chen was not worried at all. It should be known that at this moment, Yi Chen was invincible in the real world. Plots and plots were all nonsense. Yi Chen could completely destroy them with violence. If the Gong Sun clan really plotted against Yi Chen would directly wipe them out when he found out. Others might not have the confidence to do so, but Yi Chen did. It was for this reason that Yi Chen spoke to Gong Sun Qing in such a way at the beginning. Unfortunately, Gong Sun Qing did not seize the opportunity. Yi Chen would not say anything about sparing the Gong Sun clan now. Of course, Yi Chen said this deliberately for Gong Sun Qing to hear. His purpose was to make him feel a sense of danger, so that he would tell him the location of the Gong Sun clan honestly. The moment Yi Chen said this, Gong Sun Qing's face, which was already contorted, froze. At this moment, a strong sense of danger appeared in Gong Sun Qing's heart. To be more precise, Gong Sun Qing felt that even if he told him the location of the Gong Sun clan, Yi Chen might still go on a killing spree. After all, Yi Chen's words were too unreliable. What mood? Wasn't that nonsense? He was going to wipe out an entire clan. How could depend on mood? Of course, this was what Gong Sun Qing was thinking. Although Gong Sun Qing wanted to keep his mouth shut, Gong Sun Qing knew one thing very well. Even if he did not say it, Yi Chen, who had already made up his mind to kill Gong Sun Ji, would definitely be able to find the location of the Gong Sun clan. If it was someone else, they might not be able to do so, nor would they have the ability. But Yi Chen was not just anyone. He was the #1 person of the human race, the strongest existence among the players. Moreover, his strength was terrifying beyond belief. If Yi Chen said to find the location of the Gong Sun clan, Gong Sun Qing was sure that there would be many people who would tell Yi Chen where the Gong Sun clan was. Thinking of this, Gong Sun Qing felt extremely depressed. But no matter how depressed he was, there was nothing he could do. This was because he knew one thing very well. At this moment, Yi Chen was like a mountain that no human in the entire world could surpass. His Gong Sun clan was only a relatively strong existence among the humans. Against Yi Chen, they had no chance of victory. After all, Yi Chen was so strong and powerful that he could completely crush the entire human race. After thinking this through, Gong Sun Qing did his best to calm down the fear that suddenly rose in his heart. Then, he looked at Yi Chen and said, "Lord Yu of Beach, the Gong Sun clan is in the suburbs of the capital. I hope that Lord Yu of Beach will be merciful and spare the Gong Sun clan. No matter how Lord Yu of Beach wants to punish my younger brother, the Gong Sun clan guarantees that we won't obstruct you, nor will we seek revenge against Lord Yu of Beach." Hearing this, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows. Then, he looked at Gong Sun Qing and asked, "Are you going to hand over the underworld pass yourself? Or do I have to drop it?" At this moment, everyone in the real world had their own in-game bags, or rather, their own in-game storage space. If you wanted to obtain the items in the interspatial spaces, you either had to let others take them or kill them. Then, the interspatial spaces would collapse, and the items inside would fall out. It was also because of this that the already bloody apocalypse became even more bloody. To be more precise, no matter where it was, there would always be a group of people who specialized in killing people and dropping items. Yi Chen said this not because he wanted to be one of those people who specialized in killing people and dropping items, but because the Underworld Pass should have belonged to Yi Chen in the first place. Although this was a little overbearing and even a little unreasonable, it was the truth. If it weren't for Yi Chen, the Li clan wouldn't have been destroyed. If the Li clan hadn't been destroyed, even if Gong Sun Qing had 10,000 guts, he wouldn't have dared to come to the Li clan's territory to plunder good things. Of course, it was undeniable that if it weren't for the fact that someone had discovered the Li clan's secret realm and had set their sights on it, and that Yi Chen had coincidentally come to the Li clan's ruins to train blacksmiths, it was very likely that Yi Chen would have missed the Netherworld Passage token again. But this was luck. It was somewhat mysterious and even mysterious, but the result was like this. Yi Chen had already obtained 75% of the true heaven and earth's providence in the Three Kingdoms newbie area. He was also the son of Providence. When his luck was good, it was unstoppable. And now, Yi Chen being able to encounter the Underworld Pass could be said to have a lot to do with Yi Chen's great providence. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have been so coincidental as to come here and encounter the Underworld Pass just as the players were preparing to wantonly plunder the Li clan's secret realm. As soon as Yi Chen said this, Gong Sun Qing, who was expecting Yi Chen to give a definite answer, suddenly shuddered and hurriedly said, "I'll take it myself." After Gong Sun Qing finished speaking, he summoned 10 wooden boxes. He clearly understood what Yi Chen meant when he said drop it. If he didn't want to die, he would have to obediently hand over the Underworld Passage token. Of course, how much he handed over was entirely up to him. As long as he was still alive, Yichen wouldn't be able to find out if he had secretly hidden the underworld pass. Gong Sunqing was very clear about this. After all, no one except himself could see how many things were in the storage space. Seeing Gong Sunqing take out 10 boxes of the underworld pass, Yichen looked at Gong Sunqing playfully and said, "You can go die now. You Lord Beach." Gong Sunqing's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and he shouted in shock. However, just as Gong Sunqing said this, Yichen swung the long sword in his right hand directly at Gong Sunqing's neck. With his slash, Gong Sunqing's head was instantly chopped off by the long sword and flew straight up into the sky. At the same time, a large gush of blood spurted out from Gong Sunqing's severed neck and dyed the ground red. After looking at the blood all over the ground, Yichen looked at Gong Sunqing's head, which had fallen to the ground, and said, "Why didn't you just hand over all of it? Wouldn't it have been better if you had obediently handed everything over? That way, you really wouldn't have to die." When Gong Sunqing's head heard this, his eyes, which were already filled with despair, widened abruptly. His mouth moved up and down a few times, but no sound came out. At this moment, Gong Sunqing's eyes rapidly turned gray, and he died completely. In the next second, there was a crash sound. A large pile of items burst out from Gong Sunqing's storage space and piled up on the ground. Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw the 3 wooden chests scattered all over the ground. He didn't expect that after using the God's Eye rune and the Chaos Talisman, he could still see what was in the storage space of the players. This unexpected discovery was not bad at all. However, obtaining 14 boxes of Netherworld Passage tokens was even more satisfying. Next, he should go to the Mystic Realm to collect interest. No matter how many Underworld Pass tokens there were, they all belonged to him. Chapter 731. The Netherworld Pass token was very important to Yichen. Previously, Yichen had no way to obtain it. After all, even in his previous life, Yichen had only heard rumors about it and did not know where it came from. But now, Yichen knew where the Netherworld Pass token came from. Naturally, he would not miss this opportunity. To be more precise, Yichen would obtain all the Netherworld Pass tokens. He would not let go of any of them. After all, the Netherworld Pass token could only open the passage to the Netherworld for 30 days. Although Yichen could conquer a territory in the Netherworld in 30 days, it was obvious that he would not have enough Netherworld Pass tokens. It would be more practical. It should be known that the longer Yichen ignored the suppression of the Netherworld's natural laws, the easier it would be for him to seize the Netherworld's natural luck. It was even possible for him to seize all of it. It was also because of this that Yichen wanted to obtain all the Netherworld Pass tokens. Thinking of this, Yichen headed straight for the entrance of the Mystic Realm. When Yichen arrived at the entrance of the Mystic Realm, he took a step forward and entered the Mystic Realm. The moment Yichen entered the Mystic Realm, the sound of weapons clashing, angry curses, and miserable cries were instantly transmitted to Yichen's ears. Yichen looked in the direction of the sound. There were 2 groups of people fighting. One group was obviously at an advantage. They were forcing the other group to retreat into the depths of the Mystic Realm. On the ground, there were corpses and blood everywhere. There were also people who were seriously injured and wailing in pain. Seeing this, Yichen could not help but raise his eyebrows. He then flew up and arrived above the 2 groups in the blink of an eye. Yichen's sudden appearance immediately attracted the attention of the 2 groups. After all, flying in the air was not an ordinary phenomenon. They could not help but pay attention. It was also because of this that the 2 groups of people fighting each other involuntarily stopped. In the next second, there were dozens of exclamations from the 2 groups. Yichen, Yichen. As soon as the exclamation fell, the people who reacted a little slower were all stunned, and then revealed completely different expressions. Some were worried, some were even panicked and scared, while others were pleasantly surprised. In midair, Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows as he looked at the crowd with different expressions on their faces. There seemed to be quite a few people with Netherworld Passage tokens in their storage spaces. Not bad, Not bad. At the thought of this, Yi-Chen immediately shouted, "Don't worry. No matter who you are, line up and hand over the netherworld travel token and the refining materials from this place. Otherwise, I'll kill you all." As soon as Yi-Chen finished speaking, the two groups of people simultaneously revealed an expression of as expected. Obviously, these people weren't stupid. When they saw Yi-Chen, they immediately guessed what Yi-Chen was here for. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the same expression on their faces. In the next second, many of the people in the crowd who had been forced to retreat rejoiced as they lined up. There were also a few who looked hesitant as they lined up. As for the group of people who clearly had the upper hand, most of them lined up unwillingly, while a small number of people lined up obediently, not revealing the slightest bit of unwillingness. Seeing the people lining up on the ground with different expressions, Yi-Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and say, "Just obediently hand over everything. Hand over the items obediently, and you can leave safely. Don't test my patience." As soon as Yi-Chen finished speaking, many of the people on the ground who had started to line up under Yi-Chen's orders revealed panicked expressions on their faces. It was obvious that these people weren't prepared to hand over their netherworld travel tokens. Otherwise, they wouldn't have suddenly become so panicked after hearing Yi-Chen's words. When Yi-Chen saw this, he curled his lips in disdain and then shouted, "Everyone go ahead. Hand over your things one by one." After Yi-Chen finished speaking, he directly landed on the ground. At this time, the middle-aged man at the front of the line tried his best to steady his violently beating heart and then walked towards Yi-Chen. When he arrived in front of Yi-Chen, he bowed to Yi-Chen and said, "Lord Yi-Chen, Your Highness, Lord Ghost King, this is the netherworld passage token that I obtained from this place. I swear that I didn't take any of the materials here." After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he took out 6 netherworld travel tokens and respectfully handed them to Yi-Chen. After Yi-Chen received the 6 netherworld travel tokens, he glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "You can leave now. You can leave." There were no more netherworld travel tokens or refining materials in the middle-aged man's storage space, so Yi-Chen naturally wouldn't do anything to him. After hearing Yi-Chen's words, the middle-aged man immediately let out a sigh of relief and then respectfully bowed to Yi-Chen. "Thank you, Lord Ubik." After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he hurriedly left. After the middle-aged man left, the second young man in line immediately stepped forward and took out 8 netherworld travel tokens and a pile of refining materials. Yi-Chen glanced at the young man, then raised his right hand and pointed at the young man. At the same time, a muffled thunder sounded out of nowhere. Kaboom! A bolt of lightning as thick as a wash basin appeared out of nowhere and instantly blasted the young man's body apart. In the next second, a crash was heard. A large pile of refining materials, 3 netherworld travel tokens, and some other random items directly burst out. When the people in the queue saw this, all of them shuddered. At this moment, a strong sense of panic directly appeared in everyone's hearts. Even those who would soon be killed by another group of people suddenly saw Yi-Chen's arrival and felt that their savior had arrived and that they didn't need to die were no exception. They didn't think that Yi-Chen could see the items in the storage space. So many people were hoping to get lucky. They wanted to hide a portion of the netherworld travel tokens and refining materials, or even say that they didn't have anything to deceive Yi-Chen. But now, they saw that Yi-Chen didn't even ask and directly killed them, even causing the refining materials that Yi-Chen wanted to drop. As for whether or not the netherworld travel tokens had dropped, they didn't know because the netherworld travel tokens couldn't be seen with the naked eye. However, this wasn't the key point. The key point was that Yi-Chen's actions made everyone understand a fact. Yi-Chen seemed to kill whoever he wanted. He didn't even ask if the person had hidden anything. When they thought of this fact, no one could remain calm. Because in this way, whether they hid anything or not, they could still be killed by Yi-Chen. Just when everyone was at a loss because of this fact, the young man in third place looked at Yi-Chen and stammered, "Sir, you're not a member of the Yi family. You, Lord Ubik. I'll hand it all over. Don't kill me." When Yi-Chen heard this, he glanced at the young man. Then he collected the underworld passage token and the materials that had dropped on the ground and stored them all into his small world. Continue. When the young man heard this, his face immediately turned pale. At this moment, he really wanted to escape immediately and leave the mystic realm, but he knew very well that in front of Yi-chun, he had no chance of escaping. When he thought of this, the young man's face turned even paler. In the next second, the young man trembled as he walked toward Yi-chun. When he arrived in front of Yi-chun, he didn't dare to delay. He hurriedly took out 2 netherworld travel tokens and nervously handed them to Yi-chun. Yi-chun glanced at the young man and then said, "You can leave now. You can leave now." When the young man, who was hoping that Yi-chun wouldn't kill him, heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then he bowed to Yi-chun in ecstasy. Thank you, Lord you of Beach." Yi-chun waved his hand and then looked at the rest of the crowd. Continue. When the people in line heard this, they couldn't help but tremble. At this moment, they suddenly had a feeling that Yi-chun might really want to kill someone based on his mood. If they didn't want to die, it was best to behave honestly and try not to hide anything. Otherwise, if Yi-chun sensed that something was wrong, they would definitely be killed by Yi-chun. Soon, everyone came forward one after another and took out their netherworld travel tokens and refining materials. After Yi-chun accepted them, he didn't casually kill people like everyone had feared. At first, some people thought that Yi-chun had only killed people to intimidate them. Gradually, some people began to think about hiding things. However, when Yi-chun started killing again and the items that Yi-chun wanted dropped every time, everyone discovered an unbelievable fact. Yi-chun seemed to be able to see the items in the storage space. Otherwise, why would every person that Yi-chun killed drop refining materials all over the floor? Of course, this didn't exclude the possibility that those people were bold and dared to hide things. However, the problem was that Yi-chun was able to drop the items that he wanted every time. It was really too strange, so they couldn't help but think more about it. Soon, the people in line in the secret realm all involuntarily threw the thought of hiding things out of their minds without hesitation. Then, they obediently handed over the items that Yi-chun wanted. Before long, everyone handed over the items that Yi-chun wanted and left the Li clan's secret realm. They left with doubts. Of course, other than doubts, there was also reluctance and unwillingness, as well as the relief that came after being frightened. Unfortunately, no matter what they thought, Yi-chun wouldn't give them an explanation, nor would he sympathize with them. This world was already ruled by the law of the jungle. Yi-chun wouldn't do anything that bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. In the secret realm, Yi-chun glanced at the netherworld passage tokens that had already piled up into a small mountain in the small world. Then, he raised his eyebrows slightly. He wanted to train blacksmiths, but unexpectedly obtained so many netherworld passage tokens. Not bad, not bad. Thinking of this, Yi-chun took a step forward and instantly came to the side of the mountain of materials that the players hadn't finished moving. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he instantly stored the remaining 2 mountains of materials into the small world. In the next second, Yi-chun directly soared into the air and then checked back and forth in the Li clan's secret realm. Only when Yi-chun confirmed that there were no more netherworld passage tokens left did he directly leave the Li clan's secret realm. However, the moment Yi-chun left the secret realm and arrived outside, a towering sword that was completely golden in color suddenly fell from the sky and slashed directly at Yi-chun. At the same time, a furious roar was heard. "Yi-chun, I want you to die with my second brother." Chapter 732. Hearing this, Yi-chun frowned. He then looked at the huge light sword that was emitting a violent pressure that was heading straight for him. In the next second, Yi-chun's eyes narrowed. Ruling sword. Ruling sword was not a real long sword. It was a special prop that landed on Earth after the meteor fell. Its original shape was a cross. That's right, it was a cross. It looked ordinary, but its power was amazing. If it was used, it could completely smash a mountain. In Yi-chun's previous life, he had seen Ruling Sword when he was fighting against Western players. He had also been affected by the aftershocks of Ruling Sword. If Yichen hadn't obtained a life-saving item by chance, Yichen would have died on the spot. Even his soul wouldn't have been able to survive. This was because Ruling Sword's attack was a double attack. It attacked both the body and the soul. Later, Yichen heard that Ruling Sword was a prop unique to the West. It did not exist in the East. Thinking of this, Yichen waved his right hand, and the innate treasure god slayer appeared in an instant. Then, he smashed it directly at Ruling Sword that was coming at him. In the next second, the black and thick Godslayer instantly smashed into the huge Ruling Sword that was emitting a golden light. Boom! An earth-shaking roar sounded in an instant. Ruling Sword, which had a holy appearance but carried a ferocious aura, exploded in an instant. Then, small golden swords of light burst out in the sky and enveloped Yi Chun in an instant. At the same time, dense collisions sounded in an instant. Ding, ding, ding. It was the small golden swords of light that were produced after the explosion of Ruling Sword. They began to attack Yi Chen's body directly. At the same time, in the distance, the young man who used Ruling Sword saw Yi Chen surrounded by small golden swords of light and suddenly revealed a crazy smile. At this time, a foreign man with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a high nose stood beside the young man. He looked straight at the young man and then said in fluent Mandarin, "Gong Sun, Ruling Sword is invincible, and there are very few of them. Do you understand? Don't worry. As long as we can kill Yi Chun, I will make a copy of the Book of the Pill Lord and give it to the Holy See," the young man said to the foreign man with a frown. Hearing this, the foreign man nodded with satisfaction and then said, "Easterners always pay attention to integrity. I hope you won't disappoint me. Otherwise, Gong Sun, your family, and the East will be judged by justice. At that time, the Pope will form the 1,000-Cross Army to conquer the East. I'm also a member of the Church. You don't have to doubt my loyalty to the Church." The young man's face darkened when he heard this, and he said coldly. When the foreign man heard this, he shrugged helplessly and said, "Gong Sun, don't be so angry. You're my classmate and my brother. I'm saying this for your own good. I don't want to see you go down the wrong path. You should know how terrifying the Pope's 12 knights are. If they make a move, the Gong Sun family won't be able to survive. Understand, Jack. When Yi Chun is dead, I will go back and make a copy of the Book of the Pill Lord and give it to you. As for the original, don't even think about it." The young man's face darkened when he heard this, and he nodded heavily. When the foreign man heard this, he smiled and nodded, and then said proudly, "No matter how powerful this Yi Chun is, he can't survive the holy Ruling Sword. Gong Sun, you must know that only the holy light is eternal. Look, the holy light is about to baptize his soul. At that time, my Lord will definitely cleanse his soul completely and end his sinful life." As soon as the foreign man finished speaking, the golden light sword that was attacking Yi Chun exploded, and golden light filled the sky. At this moment, a terrifying temperature exploded from where Yi Chun was. Boom! The air trembled, and visible air waves appeared from where Yi Chun was standing, and then spread rapidly in all directions. At the same time, the ground under Yi Chun's feet began to crystallize in the blink of an eye, and then a huge bowl-shaped pit quickly formed. Inside, the crystal light was shining, and in the center, the golden light was still shining, as if it would not stop until Yi Chun was completely destroyed. When the young man saw this, his eyes lit up, and the foreign man beside him looked at the young man proudly, and then said, "Gong Sun, do you see this? Gong Sun, did you see that? Such a terrifying temperature can even melt steel instantly. Do you think that Yi Chun will be able to survive?" When the young man heard this, he laughed and said, "Good. As long as this bastard Yi Chun is dead, it won't be a dream for the Gong Sun family to dominate the East. Hey, brother, I have to remind you, don't forget that you are a member of the Church. Don't forget this identity." When the foreign man heard this, he patted the young man's shoulder with a smile and said. When the young man heard this, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. Then, he looked at the foreign man with a smile and said, "Don't worry. I still want to become a paladin of the apocalypse. How can I betray the Pope? When the foreign man heard this, he sighed and then said solemnly, Gongsun, don't blame me for your ambitions. Gongsun, don't hold a grudge against me. I know your ambitions. Don't be in a hurry to deny it. We are brothers. I know your ambitions and your thoughts, but I have never told anyone. However, you still have a long way to go if you want to achieve your goal. The Pope is really not to be trifled with. He has a lot of holy objects that you don't know about. Don't casually challenge the Pope's authority. He is very terrifying. When a young man heard this, his expression suddenly changed, and then he looked at the foreign man with a complicated expression and asked, Jack, why are you telling me this? Gongsun, you know. When the foreign man heard this, he looked at the young man with a melancholy and then said. When the young man heard this, he glanced at the foreign man and suddenly shuddered, and then said, I'm not in a hurry. I can wait. When the foreign man heard this, he said with a smile. At this moment, the golden light that enveloped Yi Chun suddenly dissipated. When the young man and the foreign man noticed this, they both looked over. At this moment, Yi Chun, who was completely naked, handsome, masculine, and filled with a tyrannical aura, appeared in their sight. The moment they saw Yi Chun, the young man and the foreign man were stunned, and then they cried out in surprise, How is this possible? Chapter 733. The young man and the foreign man would never have thought that ruling sword, which was so powerful that it could destroy a mountain, could only destroy Yi Chen's clothes. They couldn't do any damage to Yi Chen at all. This result was completely beyond the expectations of the two men. There was nothing they could do. They had seen the power of ruling sword. With one sword, they could destroy a mountain. How could they believe that such explosive power didn't have any effect on Yi Chen? But this was the reality that the two men in front of them saw. Yi Chen, who was standing in the huge bowl-shaped hole, was shaking his arms. Then, he looked in the direction where the two of them were. Just as the two men were in shock and disbelief, Yi Chen looked at the two men and narrowed his eyes. Gongsun Ji and the Pope's men who dominated the West in his previous life. He was wondering why someone suddenly attacked him, and it was with ruling sword. In Yi Chen's previous life, he had come into contact with the forces of the Western Vatican a few months before his rebirth. It was also at that time that Yi Chen saw the whole process of ruling sword's power. Because of this, Yi Chen was almost killed by the remaining power of ruling sword. Of course, in order to save his life, Yi Chen used a life-saving item that he had obtained by chance and survived. But this wasn't important. What was important was that the forces of the Western Vatican had come to the East at least a year earlier. This was the most important variable. Of course, this variable was something that Yi Chen couldn't guess before he heard the conversation between Gongsun Ji and the foreign man. But now, Yi Chen clearly knew why the Pope's men suddenly came to the East. To be more precise, the members of the Western Vatican suddenly came to the East for the Book of the Medicine Lord in the hands of the Gongsun family. What was the Book of the Medicine Lord? How could Yi Chen, who had been reborn, not know? It was a sacred alchemy book that made all alchemists jealous and even crazy. Inside, there were countless pill recipes from beginner level to immortal level, and it was equipped with all kinds of top alchemy techniques. No matter who got the Book of the Medicine Lord, they could become a top alchemist and make all kinds of pills that helped with cultivation. Even immortal pills could be made. Of course, the prerequisite was that one's cultivation level was high enough. Otherwise, the Book of the Medicine Lord would be useless. In Yi Chen's previous life, the news of the Book of the Medicine Lord first came from the alchemists and then spread to the entire group of the players. Unfortunately, no one knew where the Book of the Medicine Lord was or who had it. As for Yi Chen, in his previous life, he had also thought about obtaining the Book of the Pill Lord and becoming an alchemist. Because in this way, Yi Chen would have an innumerable amount of pills to consume, and it would also allow Yi Chen to have a safe, living environment. The pills made by alchemists could increase one's cultivation level quickly. No one disliked pills. Even the most vicious people would not casually attack alchemists. Even if they did, they would at most rob the alchemists of their pills. They would not kill the alchemists. This was also the reason why Yi Chun wanted to become an alchemist in his previous life. After all, ever since the meteor fell and the game started, the real world changed completely. What normal people faced was danger everywhere, from the demon clan to the humans themselves. In his previous life, Yi Chun was an ordinary person who couldn't be more ordinary. So, Yi Chun wanted to get the Book of the Medicine Lord and become an alchemist. That way, Yi Chun would be able to live a safe life and continue to work hard to survive. Although this was a little like a peasant's idea, the Yi Chun in his previous life did not even know how to survive. He could only chase after some hope. Unfortunately, Yi Chun's idea was just an idea. It could not be realized. Even alchemists had only read about the Book of the Medicine Lord. They did not know where it was. So how could Yi Chun know? Of course, Yi Chun in his previous life did not know. But now Yi Chun knew. He did not expect that the Book of the Medicine Lord that all alchemists in his previous life wanted was in the hands of the Gongsun clan. No wonder the Gongsun clan rose so quickly after ascending to the Eldritch world. Thinking of this, Yi Chun raised his eyebrows. He did not know about it before, but now that he knew, he was definitely going to get the Book of the Medicine Lord. Yi Chun wanted the Book of the Medicine Lord not to fulfill his dream of becoming an alchemist, but to use it on his subordinates. To be more precise, it was for the Nanhua Elder. After all, the Nanhua Elder was a pharmacist and knew how to make pills. Only he was suitable to learn the Book of the Medicine Lord. In this way, Yi Chun would have an endless supply of powerful pills to use. In this way, whether it was Yi Chun, Yi Chun's subordinates, or Yi Chun's army, their strength would soar. Thinking of this, Yi Chun used his mind. A set of heaven-grade equipment from the Golden Turban Rebellion appeared and was put on by Yi Chun. At this moment, Yi Chun was completely naked. Although Yi Chun didn't really mind, he didn't want others to look at him, so it was better not to. After all, Yi Chun did not have any special fetishes. As for the equipment that Yi Chun could take out from the small world, it was because they were all true equipment. In addition, Yi Chun had a small world that could allow him to grow infinitely. Otherwise, these true equipment wouldn't have appeared in the real world. Just as Yi Chun put on his armor and covered his important parts, the foreign man called Jack hurriedly looked at Gongsun Ji and said, "Let's go. He's too scary." Hearing this, Gongsun Ji came back to his senses and said with an ugly expression, "Let's go." After Gongsun Ji finished speaking, he and the foreign man took out a stone. Then, two balls of white light appeared and enveloped the two of them in an instant. Seeing this, Yi Chun smiled coldly. "I'm in the tribulation passing stage. Even if you two use the greater teleportation jade slip, you won't be able to escape from my divine senses detection range." Thinking of this, Yi Chun's primordial spirit moved. His enormous divine sense instantly covered a radius of 500,000 miles. At this moment, Gongsun Ji and the foreign man disappeared in an instant. In the suburbs of the capital, in a large town called the Medicine King Town, two balls of white light suddenly appeared in the hall of the mayor's mansion. Then, Gongsun Ji and the foreign man called Jack appeared. "Little Ji, where's your second brother?" In the hall, a middle-aged man was drinking tea. When he saw Gongsun Ji and the foreign man suddenly appear, he could not help but be stunned. He then asked. Hearing this, Gongsun Ji said with a gloomy expression, "Second brother, my second brother died. Second brother was killed by Yi Chun. I just took revenge for second brother, but I failed." Hearing this, the middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly stood up and shouted in shock, "What? You said your second brother was killed by Yi Chun?" Chapter 734. After Gongsun Ji heard the middle-aged man's question, he nodded with an ugly expression and said, "Yes. Second brother was killed by Yi Chun and his head was chopped off by Yi Chun. In this case, I can't revive him. Uncle, my condolences." The foreign man named Jack patted Gongsun Ji's shoulder, then looked at the middle-aged man and sighed. When the middle-aged man heard this, he slumped into a chair. How could this be? How did he meet Yi Chun and get killed by Yi Chun? As soon as the middle-aged man said this, he suddenly thought of something, and his face suddenly became extremely pale. In the next second, the middle-aged man looked at Gong Sun Ji in a panic and asked, "You said that you wanted to avenge your second brother, but you failed?" "Yes, Yi Chun is too overpowered. Even ruling sword can't hurt him." Gong Sun Ji nodded in agreement after a brief pause. When the middle-aged man heard Gong Sun Ji's words, his expression changed again, and he said angrily, "How many times have I told you? How many times have I told you? Don't think that you're invincible just because you've learned from abroad. I've also told you not to provoke Yi Chun. Why didn't you listen?" "Father, Yi Chun killed second brother, and I wanted to avenge him." "What's wrong with that?" Gong Sun Ji, who was already in a bad mood, roared angrily. When the middle-aged man heard this, he became angry and shouted, "What do you know? Don't I want revenge? Let me tell you, when I heard that your second brother was killed by Yi Chun, I wanted to skin Yi Chun and break Yi Chun's bones. But can I get revenge on Yi Chun now? Let me tell you, I can't. Do you know why? Let me tell you, Yi Chun is famous for being vengeful, and this bastard is at the tribulation stage. Do you know what it means to be at the tribulation stage? Let me tell you, the next step is to become an immortal. Before the meteor fell, I called you to come back, but you insisted on staying abroad. Now that you're back, you still don't listen to me and don't read those books related to cultivation. You're so stupid that you let your emotions affect your decisions. Do you know how much trouble you brought to our Gong Sun family? I'm leaving. That's enough." Gong Sun Ji was enraged when he heard that and roared. When the foreign man heard this, his expression changed. He quickly grabbed Gong Sun Ji, who was about to leave. "Gong Sun, don't be like this. Uncle didn't mean that." After the foreign man finished speaking to Gong Sun Ji, he looked at the middle-aged man, who was even angrier because of Gong Sun Ji's words. "Uncle, I still have a teleportation formation that can be used once. Just in case, why don't you gather everyone and return to the Holy Sea with me? As long as we reach the Holy Sea, we will be safe. I guess that's the only way." The middle-aged man looked at Gong Sun Ji in annoyance. When the foreign man heard this, he smiled faintly and said, "There's no time to lose, Uncle." Just as the foreign man said this, the space in the hall suddenly distorted. In the next second, a young man stepped out and appeared in the hall. When Gong Sun Ji, the foreign man, and the middle-aged man saw the young man, they were all stunned. Then they shouted in shock, "Yi Chun!" Their words were filled with shock and a deep sense of fear. The middle-aged man had heard all kinds of rumors about Yi Chun and knew how terrifying Yi Chun was. However, Gong Sun Ji and the foreign man had seen Yi Chun's ferocity with their own eyes. He took the sword of judgment head-on and came out unscathed. If that wasn't ferocious, then what was? They all thought that Yi Chun would come after them, but they didn't think that Yi Chun would come so quickly. Just as the three of them were shocked, Yi Chun raised his right hand and pointed at Gong Sun Ji. In the next second, a deafening sound of thunder rang out. Kaboom! A bolt of lightning as thick as an arm appeared and struck Gong Sun Ji's body. Boom! Gong Sun Ji didn't even have time to react before he was blasted into pieces by the violent lightning. At this moment, Yi Chun's primordial spirit suddenly relaxed a little. Although this change wasn't big, Yi Chun still felt it clearly. Sure enough, Gong Sun Ji was an obsession from his previous life. After killing him, the obsession disappeared, and the demon hidden in his primordial spirit was also instantly removed. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, the middle-aged man suddenly let out a shrill roar. No! As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, the foreign man, who was covered in Gong Sun Ji's charred flesh, took out a stone tablet with a hexagram engraved on it without hesitation. When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled coldly. Then, with a thought, his powerful consciousness instantly enveloped the hexagram stone tablet. Then he saw the hexagram stone tablet in the foreign man's hand vibrate violently and fly directly into Yi Chun's hand. The foreign man, who was just about to use the hexagram stone tablet, was shocked when he saw it being snatched away. At this moment, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Chun with a twisted face and roared angrily. "Yi Chun, you forced me to do this." After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he took out a pitch-black ball and threw it at Yi Chun. Yi Chun's eyes narrowed when he saw the black ball that the middle-aged man threw at him. Geomagnetic lightning bomb. The geomagnetic lightning bomb was a special tool that was similar to black technology. It was also one of the treasures that fell to Earth with the meteor. Although the geomagnetic lightning bomb could only be used once, it was shockingly powerful. To be precise, as long as it was within the explosion range of the geomagnetic lightning bomb, everything within its range, including the Earth, would be blasted into nothingness. It could be said that as long as one was hit by the geomagnetic lightning bomb, even the current Yi Chun would not be able to withstand it. This was because the geomagnetic lightning bomb's offensive attributes not only included the lightning element, but also the magnetic element and a trace of the black hole attribute. Yi Chun was not afraid of the lightning element because Yi Chun was a lightning element paragon. However, the magnetic element and the special black hole attribute made their attacks extremely strange. Yi Chun really did not have any effective defensive measures at the moment. After all, Yi Chun's connate numinous treasures and connate cardinal treasures were all offensive equipment. Their defensive capabilities were not strong. Of course, the most important thing was that Yi Chun's connate numinous treasures and connate cardinal treasures had not been fully refined and could not unleash their full power. Damn it, who would have thought that the geomagnetic lightning bomb in his previous life, which was known as the self-destructing divine weapon, actually came from the Gongsun clan? In Yi Chun's previous life, the geomagnetic lightning bomb had officially appeared, and its power had been unleashed in the Eldritch world. At that time, a geomagnetic lightning bomb had directly blasted a heavenly immortal to death, the kind that did not even leave behind a corpse. One could only imagine the ferocity of the geomagnetic lightning bomb. However, the user could not leave the explosion range at all. Therefore, the person who used the geomagnetic lightning bomb would also be blasted to death by the geomagnetic lightning bomb. And this was the reason why the geomagnetic lightning bomb was known as the self-destructing divine weapon. At the thought of this, Yi Chun's mind shifted, and the space in front of him instantly distorted. Just as Yi Chun was about to leave, he suddenly froze. Wait, that's not right, damn it. I almost forgot that the geomagnetic lightning bomb required dermic powers to be officially detonated. Damn it, that gave me a fright, but just as well, this geomagnetic lightning bomb belongs to me now. Chapter 735. Thinking up to this point, Yi Chun could not help but smirk. He raised his right hand and grabbed the geomagnetic lightning bomb that the middle-aged man had thrown at him. In the next second, Yi Chun caught the geomagnetic lightning bomb in his hand. At the same time, Yi Chun completely neutralized the energy contained within the geomagnetic lightning bomb. The geomagnetic lightning bomb required the user to inject mana into it to detonate. It was basically impossible for it to explode from a violent collision. However, Yi Chun did not want to take this risk. If the geomagnetic lightning bomb really exploded from a collision, Yi Chun would have no time to regret it. Therefore, the instant Yi Chun grabbed the geomagnetic lightning bomb, he neutralized all of the energy contained within it. The instant Yi Chun grabbed the geomagnetic lightning bomb, without causing it to explode, the sound of a system notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations! You have obtained a special tool, geomagnetic lightning bomb. The moment the system notification ended, Yi Chun raised his eyebrows involuntarily. Sure enough, I was right. Thinking up to this point, Yi Chun looked directly at the geomagnetic lightning bomb in his right hand. Geomagnetic lightning bomb requires the user to inject mana into it to activate the grand elemental magnetic array within. Function: obliterates all living things. The more mana you inject, the stronger the explosion. Maximum attack range: 100,000 square kilometers. Note: without mana, it can be detonated through collision. The explosion power will be reduced by 100-fold. Explosion range: 1 square kilometer. After reading the geomagnetic lightning bomb's attributes, Yi Chun's expression froze. Holy shit! The rumors regarding the geomagnetic lightning bomb in his previous life were actually not complete, Damn it, fortunately, I was careful enough to neutralize the energy contained within the geomagnetic lightning bomb. Otherwise, just as Yi-chan thought up to this point, the middle-aged man, who had a crazed look on his face, suddenly froze. Then, he roared ferociously. How could it not explode? You clearly said that it would explode upon collision. Why didn't it explode? Because Yi-chun had killed Gong Sun Qing and Gong Sun Ji. The middle-aged man had wanted to die together with Yi-chun. Hence, he had used the geomagnetic lightning bomb. However, the result was seriously out of his expectations. Not only was the geomagnetic lightning bomb caught by Yi-chun, it did not even explode. When Yi-chun heard this, he curled his lips in disdain. With a thought, he instantly stored the geomagnetic lightning bomb into his pocket dimension. Yi-chan wanted the geomagnetic lightning bomb, not because he wanted to self-destruct, but because Yi-chun had a way to use it without getting hurt. One had to know that Yi-chun had refined the space origin and grasped the power of space. If Yi-chan wanted to use the geomagnetic lightning bomb to bombard the enemy, he could use his spatial teleportation ability to send the geomagnetic lightning bomb imbued with mana to any place thousands of miles away. This way, no matter how powerful the geomagnetic lightning bomb was, it would not affect Yi-chun. Of course, Yi-chun would not use such a powerful weapon casually. Even if he used it, it would be after he ascended to the Eldritch world and began his journey of conquest. At that time, none of the enemies that Yi-chan encountered were weak. Furthermore, their numbers were ridiculously large. This way, the geomagnetic lightning bomb could be put to good use. One bomb could blow up all the enemies within 100,000 square kilometers. Just as Yi-chan thought of this, the middle-aged man, with a ferocious expression, glared fiercely at Yi-chan. Then he took out 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs, one in each hand. Seeing this, Yi-chan's eyes lit up. Holy shit, this bastard actually has geomagnetic lightning bombs. Just as Yi-chan finished thinking, the middle-aged man grabbed the geomagnetic lightning bomb with both hands and tossed it to the ground. He figured out why the geomagnetic lightning bombs did not explode. Therefore, he did not intend to throw them at Yi-chan, but at the ground instead. This way, the geomagnetic lightning bombs would really explode and kill Yi-chan. As for the fact that the Gong Sun clan and everything within a 1 square kilometer radius would be destroyed by the geomagnetic lightning bombs, he did not care at all, because there was only one thing on his mind right now: revenge. He did not care about reason or self-preservation anymore, because it was useless. Yi-chun had already chased the Gong Sun clan all the way to Medicine King Town. There was no way he would let him go. Just as the middle-aged man threw the 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs, Yi-chun raised his right hand and grabbed at the air in the direction of the 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs that were about to hit the ground suddenly changed direction and flew rapidly toward Yi-chun. In the blink of an eye, they were caught by Yi-chun. Looking at the 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs in his hand, Yi-chun could not help but smirk. Then, he put the 2 geomagnetic lightning bombs into his pocket dimension. Seeing this, the middle-aged man was stunned again. With a puff, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, the middle-aged man was furious. Otherwise, he would not have acted like this. Yi-chun looked at the middle-aged man who was spitting out blood and asked, "Any more?" "Continue. You. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's eyes widened. He pointed at Yi-chun and stammered. Hearing this, Yi-chun could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the thick black god-slayer appeared in an instant. In the next second, Yi-chun stabbed the god-slayer in his right hand at the foreign man, who was secretly moving his lips while Yi-chun was grabbing the geomagnetic lightning bombs. There was a sound. The black and thick god-slaying spear pierced through the foreign man's shoulder in an instant, interrupting his movement. Seeing this, the foreign man was slightly stunned. Then, he lowered his head to look at the god-slayer that had pierced through his shoulder. At this moment, boundless pain appeared in an instant, and then it was transmitted to the foreign man's nerves. At this moment, the foreign man's face could not help but contort. Then, he opened his mouth and let out a mournful howl. "Ah, idiot, Others might not know what you were doing with your lips, but how could I not know? You still wanted to secretly use magic. You were thinking too much. Thinking of this, Yichen curled his lips in disdain. Then, he looked at the foreign man and asked, "Tell me, what else did that old fart the Pope ask you to do other than get the book of the Medicine Lord?" When Yi Chun arrived at the Medicine King town of the Gongsun clan, he immediately killed Gongsun Ji, his enemy from his previous life. However, he did not care about the foreign man because Yi Chun still wanted to get information about the Western Vatican from the foreign man. At this moment, the players in the Eastern region might not know much about the Western Vatican. In fact, 99% of them did not even know about it. However, how could Yi Chun, who had been reborn, not know about it? In his previous life, the Western Vatican was not a benevolent force at all. On the surface, those people were humble, just, and even self-proclaimed to be righteous. However, in reality, they were even more vicious than the people who usually did evil. Although Yi Chun had only been in contact with the Western Vatican for a few months in his previous life, before he was reborn, in those few months of memories, most of the time, the Western Vatican had the upper hand. This was different from Yi Chun's previous life, when the game area of the Three Kingdoms was attacked by the Allied forces. The players of the Eastern region and the local natives worked together to barely resist the Allied forces. In the real world, there were only players from the Eastern region. There were no natives. Moreover, this was not the main point. The main point was that in the Eastern region, there were still shifter players who did evil. Therefore, the major forces in the Eastern region, as well as the casual players, were defeated by the Western Vatican. By the time Yi Chun was reborn, the Western Vatican had already taken over half of the Eastern region. As for why the Western Vatican spent so much effort to attack the Eastern region, it was actually very simple. It was for the cultivation resources of the Eastern region. To put it simply, the Western region was deeply loved by God and obtained a large number of powerful items. On the other hand, the Eastern region was cared for by heaven and earth and had endless cultivation resources. The Eastern region lacked sufficient cultivation resources, while the Eastern region lacked powerful items. Therefore, a war broke out. However, the initiator of this war was the Western Vatican, not the Eastern region. Chapter 736. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the foreign man's face suddenly changed, but the middle-aged man was stunned. The foreign man did not expect Yi Chun to know the Pope. After all, Yi Chun's words contained the same meaning, so the foreign man could not help but think so. The middle-aged man did not expect that the foreign man who suddenly returned to the East with his son, who looked very friendly, was actually after the book of the Medicine Lord. In the next second, the foreign man, whose face was distorted due to pain and shock, looked directly at Yi Chun and then asked carefully, "Mr. Yi, do you know the Pope?" "No." Yi Chun heard this, glanced at the foreign man, and then said disdainfully. When the foreign man heard Yi Chun's answer, he could not help but be stunned. At this moment, a strong feeling of trash appeared directly in the foreign man's heart. F***CK. You don't know him, but you call him so familiar, calling him an old fart. Thinking of this, the foreign man's mouth could not help but twitch, and then he said, "Mr. Yi, there is no hatred between us. Why can't we have a peaceful talk?" "A peaceful talk? Are you sent by God to be funny?" Yi Chun heard this, smiled coldly, and then asked. When the foreign man heard Yi Chun's endless ridicule of God, his face suddenly sank, and then he said in a deep voice, "Mr. Yi, please don't make fun of my faith. This is blasphemy against God." When Yi Chun heard this, he curled his lips in disdain, and then said, "What bullsh asterisk T God? Isn't he just a birdman with wings? God exists. As long as one ascends to the untainted world, one will be able to see God when the 3,000 world wars begins." In his previous life, although Yi Chun had never seen God, he had seen the so-called angels. They were birdmen with wings, neither male nor female. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not have said this. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that when God led his army of angels into the untainted land, before they could preach God's doctrine and start the plain war, they were killed by the bad-tempered Grand Master of Heaven and the two sages of the West who could not tolerate God. Yichen happened to see this scene in his previous life. That scene was truly spectacular. Bird feathers filled the sky, and it was raining birdmen's corpses everywhere. It was also for this reason that Yichen directly expressed his disdain when the foreign man defended God. It was indeed disdainful. F***, what angels? What God? Running to the eastern desolate world? They were just a bunch of trash. What was there to be afraid of? As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the foreign man's eyes were filled with anger. When Yichen saw this, he sneered and pulled out the Godslayer in his right hand. With a puff sound, the Godslayer was pulled back by Yichen in an instant, and then a large amount of blood gushed out. In the next second, Yichen stabbed the foreign man with the Godslayer in his right hand again. Puff sound was heard. The black and thick Godslayer instantly pierced through the foreign man's thigh. Ouch! An extremely mournful and miserable howl immediately rang out. At this moment, the foreign man could no longer maintain the anger in his eyes. Only pain and the fear of death were left in his eyes. In fact, if Yichen had not interrogated the foreign man's soul would have been devoured by the Godslayer. Yichen looked at the foreign man who was trembling because of the pain and coldly smiled, then asked, "What are you doing? That old Pope, other than asking you to get the Book of the Pill Lord, what else did he ask you to do?" After Yichen found out that the Pope had sent people to the east in advance, although he understood the Pope's purpose through the conversation between Gong Sun Qing and the foreign man, Yichen always felt that a person like the Pope would not only ask the foreign man to do this one thing. Otherwise, Yichen would not ask the foreign man like this. As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the foreign man looked at Yichen with a pale face and said, "You can't do this to me. You can't do this to me. I'm a foreigner. I want human rights. A foreign friend? For my ass." When Yichen heard this, he curled his lips in disdain. After that, he pulled out the Godslayer in his right hand and stabbed it again. Puff sound was heard. The black and thick Godslayer directly and violently pierced the foreign man's other leg. Ouch! The foreign man once again let out an extremely mournful howl. Then his face was directly distorted to the extreme, completely out of shape. At this moment, the foreign man suddenly had the urge to die immediately. It was really too painful. "Are you going to talk or not?" Yichen glanced at the foreign man and asked again. As soon as Yichen finished speaking, he pulled out the Godslayer in his right hand again and stabbed it at the foreign man again. Puff sound was heard. The Godslayer directly pierced the foreign man's arm. The foreign man screamed again, and his body involuntarily trembled violently. However, he still did not speak. Even though he was in so much pain that his veins were bulging and his blood was spurting, he still did not speak. Seeing this, Yichen did not ask any more questions. He directly stabbed the foreign man again and again, shot after shot, one after another, until the 15th shot. The foreign man's body was full of holes. Finally, the foreign man could not stand it anymore. He then shouted at Yichen in an incomparably miserable voice, "Devil, you're a devil, a follower of Satan." After the foreign man finished shouting, he began to cry. He cried in sorrow and despair. In the foreign man's opinion, Yichen's interrogation method was too F***ing violent and barbaric. Otherwise, why would he not stab the foreign man in the right place, but in other places? And F***ing continuously. He was obviously seizing the opportunity to stab the foreign man before he bled to death. When Yichen heard this, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then he said, "Devil, if you can survive, you'll find that I'll become a devil in the eyes of everyone outside the East. Then they'll see me as God and worship me as their Lord." Yichen would soon participate in a world war in the game world. When the time came, he would definitely start a massacre. Moreover, he would directly destroy country. This was because Yichen wanted to snatch the world providence from the foreign game area. If the country was not destroyed, it would be impossible to obtain the world's providence. This way, the foreign players regardless of whether they were from the east or the west, would know about Yi Chun. They would also know about Yi Chen's brutality and Yi Chen's unparalleled strength. They would see Yi Chun as a devil. However, in order to survive, they would definitely bow to Yi Chun and worship Yi Chun as the ruler of their country. Otherwise, they would never be able to return to the game world. This was because Yi Chun did not allow it. The reason was that simple and violent. Chapter 737. As soon as Yi Chen's words fell, the foreman was suddenly stunned. Then, he looked at Yi Chun with a complicated expression. If it was before, the foreman would definitely think that Yi Chun was bragging and exaggerating. But now, the foreman really didn't think so. In the eyes of the foreign man, Yi Chun, a man from the east, was simply abnormal. Otherwise, how could Yi Chun even resist ruling sword? Moreover, he knew spatial magic that countless Western mages wanted to learn and thunder magic that was comparable to the #1 attack power. This kind of Yi Chun could go wherever he wanted and destroy whoever he wanted. Even the Pope, who had countless treasures, might not be able to resist Yi Chen's frontal attack. Thinking of this, the foreign man suddenly fell silent. But soon, the foreign man looked up at Yi Chun and said, "If I say it, will you let me go? I want to see your so-called world domination." "Let you go." When Yi Chun heard this, he curled his lips in disdain and then continued, "Let you go back and inform the Pope so that he can prepare in advance. Also, you gave ruling sword to Gongsun Ji and let him use it to attack me. Do you think you still have a chance to live?" How could Yi Chun let the foreign man go? Just now, Yi Chun said that if the foreign man could live, it was just an assumption. Unfortunately, the foreign man was grasping at straws. He really thought that Yi Chun might let him go. When the foreign man heard this, he suddenly shivered. Then, he hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and said, "God above, a strong man shouldn't be so cruel. He can kill people, but he can't torture people. This is not what a strong gentleman should do. Mr. Yi, you are a strong man from the East and the future king of the world. Please treat every person who has surrendered to you well." Surrender? When Yi Chun heard this, he looked at the foreign man who was good at flattering and then said, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Your so-called submission is nothing more than a chance to live. Also, I can tell you one thing. I won't accept any citizens in the real world, at least not now. Moreover, even if you were to accept them, he would first accept the Yan Huang tribe and not some foreigners." What Yi Chun was taking in, he was just taking in subordinates. If Yi Chun really took them in, he would definitely not leave them in the lurch. So, in the end, Yi Chun would create a safe living environment for all his subordinates. If that was the case, Yi Chun wouldn't accept players from the East and would only accept foreign players. Wasn't that a pain in the ass? What benevolence? What benevolence? Even if he had to do something, Yi Chun would only do it for the Yan Huang tribe. He would not take care of some foreign friend. Of course, this was just a hypothetical situation. Yi Chun would never accept underlings, at least not now. One had to know that today, after the meteor fell, the former morality had become an unattainable fantasy. The entire world was filled with violence, blood, filth, death, all kinds of conspiracies and all kinds of schemes. No matter how capable Yi Chun was, he would not casually contribute to something that would benefit all of humanity. If Yi Chun really did that, it would not take long before a series of conspiracies and schemes targeted at Yi Chun. After all, there were too many ambitious people who were still alive after the meteor fell. And none of these ambitious people did not want to become a peerless expert who dominated the world. None of them did not want to obtain supreme power. This was because the opportunity was placed in front of everyone. As long as they became stronger in the game, they would become stronger in the real world. In front of such an opportunity, how could these ambitious people give it up so easily? Yi Chun did not want to be constantly on the lookout for plots and conspiracies. Therefore, Yi Chun would not casually accept any underlings. Even if he did accept underlings, it would be after Yi Chun had the ability that no one could surpass or reach. At that time, Yi Chun would be fearless. No matter how hard the players worked, they would never be able to reach Yi Chen's height. In that case, all conspiracies and schemes would be nonsense. Yi Chen could completely destroy them with violence. The moment Yi Chen said that, the foreign man was stunned. Then, he hurriedly said, "Why? Mr. Yi, you are the man who wants to become the king of the world. The whole world will be under your feet. Everyone will be your subjects. Shouldn't a true king care for his subjects?" You are right. A king does need to care for his subjects. However, why should I accept everyone in the world? Yi Chen sneered and said, even if Yi Chen really unified the world, he could not accept everyone in the world. Among them, such as Japan, South Korea, and India, Yi Chen would directly destroy them. Of course, Yi Chen would not say this out loud. There was no need to tell this foreign man either. The foreign man was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then his eyes lit up. In the next second, the foreign man hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and said respectfully, "Mr. Yi, I am your subject. Respected Mr. Yi, I, Jack. I am Lawrence. I am willing to be your subject. Please accept my kneeling." After the foreign man finished speaking, he ignored the pain from the dozens of holes in his body and forced himself to kneel. Then, he bowed 3 times to Yi Chen. Yi Chen sneered when he saw this. The foreign man suddenly did this because he wanted Yi Chen to let him go. Otherwise, he would not have done this kind of etiquette in ancient Eastern times. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the foreign man suddenly took out a thick book and raised it above his head with trembling hands. Yi Chen was stunned when he saw the book raised by the foreign man. At this moment, the foreign man said respectfully, "Honorable King, your subject, Jack. I am Lawrence. I am willing to offer you the ancient contract book. I hope you will like it." When Yi Chen heard this, he looked at the foreign man. Then he used his right hand to grab the ancient contract book that the foreign man was talking about. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining a special treasure, the ancient contract book. Once the system notification ended, Yi Chen looked at the ancient contract book in his hand. Then his eyes lit up. Damn, so this is what it does. Ancient contract book? It contains the power of laws. Under the condition that both parties agree, a master-slave contract, a slave contract, and an equal contract can be signed. The number of contracts signed is unlimited. Looking at the attributes of the ancient contract book, Yi Chen was in a good mood. Damn, with this he could totally show off his skills in the netherworld. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.